Chapter 270. The demon race is in danger. In the Purple Cloud Palace, Tao ancestor Hongjun was also shocked. He did not expect the wizard race to have such a trump card. With his strength, he did not need to see the result. He only needed to see the process to understand everything and see the trump card of the wizard race. In the eyes of all the living beings in the primordial world, an incomparably sacred and majestic Tao shadow suddenly appeared in the primordial world. The primordial world shook even more violently. At this moment, the entire world was cheering and filled with joy. All the living beings in the primordial world could clearly feel it. The Khanate Tao descended, and the laws of heaven and earth continued to appear. The origin of heaven and earth also descended. Everything appeared. In the primordial world, all kinds of phenomena appeared, welcoming a certain supreme existence. The origin of that Tao shadow was self-evident. It was the creator of the primordial world, the existence closest to the eternal great Tao in the world. The son of great Tao, Pangu. The moment Pangu's true body appeared, the three pure ones' expressions suddenly changed on Kunlun Mountain. That was because their primordial spirits were trembling continuously, as if they were about to leave their bodies and return to Panga's embrace to play the role of Panga's primordial spirit again. Panga's primordial spirit was the three pure ones, but the three pure ones were not Panga's primordial spirit. The moment they developed intelligence, they were new individuals, which also meant that Panga's primordial spirit had died. After hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation, they had obtained the realm of indestructibility. How could the three pure ones be willing to sacrifice themselves and recondense Panga's primordial spirit in exchange for Panga's return? At that moment, the three pure ones guarded their primordial spirits and mobilized all their strength to cut off their connection with Panga's true body. I am me, the one and only. I am not anyone's incarnation. Moral sacred word, suppress. Steadying his beliefs, the grand pure one's body surged with the principles of morality and refined all the remaining Panga's primordial spirit chi in his primordial spirit. At the same time, the primeval golden scripture appeared on the body of the heavenly lord of the primeval beginning. It narrated the truth of the great Tao and washed away the chi of Panga's primeval spirit in his primordial spirit. And on the Grand Master of Heaven's body, the numinous treasure Tao scripture appeared, deducing all kinds of things in the world and refining the power of Panga's primordial spirit in his primordial spirit. The Tao of virtue, the golden scripture of the primordial spirit, and the numinous treasure Tao Sutra were not the innate, clear spirit Tao bestowed upon the three pure ones by the heavenly Tao, nor were they the three Taos of Shi, Yuan, and Xian that Pangu inherited. Instead, it was the Tao that the three pure ones had comprehended themselves. It was the manifestation of all their Tao comprehensions, and it represented their highest achievement. It possessed boundless power. This was a Dharma that was free from Panga's influence. It was a Dharma that belonged to the three pure ones. Only this Dharma could help them cut off their connection with Pangu. As the connection between the three pure ones and Pangu was severed, the heaven-opening mark on their bodies, as well as the heaven-opening providence, dissipated quite a bit. There were gains and losses. They had lost a part of Panga's legacy in exchange for complete freedom. Only the three pure ones knew whether it was good or bad. This was the difference between the three pure ones and the 12 ancestors of sorcery. Although they also respected and admired Pangu, it was impossible for them to exchange their lives for Panga's life. The three pure ones lived for themselves. However, the 12 ancestors of sorcery were different. Pangu was their belief. The sorcerer tribe's worship of Pangu was unparalleled in the untainted land. For Pangu, they could give up everything. If they could revive Panga by giving up their lives, they would not hesitate at all. The sorcerer tribe lived for themselves and also for Pangu. It was for this reason that the 12 ancestors of sorcery could obtain Pangu's hall and comprehend the 12 divine beings killing formation from it. They could summon Panga's real body. The three pure ones did not have the sorcerer tribe's heart. Therefore, even if the three of them combined their primordial spirits, they could not summon Pangu's primordial spirit. That was because Pangu did not give them the right to do so. Looking at the majestic real body of Pangu in front of them, the demon clan could not help but swallow their saliva. They were so shocked that they could not speak. This was the creation god of the untainted land, the most powerful existence in the world. How could they fight this battle? A chill rose from their backs, making the demon clan feel cold from head to toe. A strong sense of despair emerged in their hearts, and they felt that they had lost all hope in the future. I am the Celestial Emperor, the master of all living beings in the world. So what if it's Pangu? I created the demon clan, established the heavenly court, maintained the order of the world, and found a chance for the innate living beings to transcend. I am limitless. Even if Pangu comes in person, I want to fight him. Right now, he is just a fake body formed by the ancestral sorcerer. What do I have to fear? Kill. After all, he was the overlord of the world. After a moment of absent-mindedness, Jun recovered and strengthened his beliefs. He was fearless and looked straight at Pangu's real body. Just as Jun said, the greatest contribution of the establishment of the heavenly court was not to maintain the order of the world, but to find a chance for the innate living beings to transcend. The demon clan was a connate living being. No matter how many connate god fiends there were, they could not be endless. Of course, not all of the 3,000 demon gods of the demon clan were connate god fiends. Many of them were connate living beings. One had to know that the untainted land was the world of the connate god fiends, under their control. How difficult was it for the connate living beings to attain the Tao? Before Jun established the heavenly court, no connate living being had attained the Tao. Daluo Jinxian had transcended. It was Jun. He was the one who created the demon clan, established the heavenly court, and gathered supreme providence. It was as if he had split the world apart. He had snatched the opportunity to attain the Tao from the hands of the connate god fiends. It was because of this feat that the connate living beings swore to be loyal to Jun. Only then could he sit firmly on the position of Celestial Emperor. Otherwise, did he really think that the position of Celestial Emperor was something that anyone could sit on? In the connate era, obtaining the recognition of the connate living beings had great merit and great providence. Only then could one condense the position of Celestial Emperor. I have long heard of the strength of the great Taoist priests. He is the best in the world, and no one can compete with him. Today, Tai will have a good fight with him. If he wins, let the world know that the East Emperor is worthy of the title of #1 in the primordial world. Let the demon clan know that they still have an emperor who can save their lives, and let those who have different thoughts give up. Use a bloody battle to completely determine the situation of the primordial world. If I lose, I will have no regrets dying in the hands of the great Taoist priests. At this moment, Tai's fighting spirit was completely stimulated. It was unprecedentedly high. He wanted to compete with Pangu's true body. Since the establishment of the demon clan, we have become the overlords of the world from nothing. Who knows how many calamities we have experienced and how many difficulties we have overcome? How can we fall here? Men of the demon clan, kill! Kill to your heart's content. Kill to the heart's content and show the power of the demon clan. We can't let the living beings of the primordial world look down on the demon clan. At this moment, Fushi's appearance had completely changed. His aura was incomparably fierce, and the scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood was reflected behind him. There was no longer a trace of his previous gentle and amiable appearance. Chapter 271. Fushi, Emperor Shi of the demon race, the most intelligent person in the primordial world, was also a top-notch great mystical ability below the saint. There was no doubt about his strength. Kill! Victory to the demons! The three demon emperors shouted from the bottom of their hearts and reawakened the fighting spirit of the demons. They overcame the fear in their hearts and clenched their weapons tightly as they charged towards the Magi. Ridiculous! The demons have gone against the flow and lost their Tao in the world. Today, the Magi are under the orders of Father God to destroy them. The demons should be destroyed. Panga's true body looked at the three of them and smiled disdainfully. He reached out and shouted, "Axe, come!" As soon as he finished speaking, the Taiji painting, Panga's banner, and the chaos bell in the hands of the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, and the East Emperor Tai almost at the same time. Suddenly, they trembled and almost flew out of their hands towards Panga's true body to form the Panga's axe again. Oh no! The three treasures were the foundation of the three of them. They could not lose them. Immediately, the three of them used their methods to suppress the three treasures. After all, they were treasures that were connected to their lives. In addition, Panga's axe was already in the past. The three of them did not spend much effort to suppress the three treasures. On the other hand, the East Emperor Tai could not use the East Emperor Bell when facing Panga's true body to prevent accidents. Humph! Seeing that he could not summon Panga's axe, Pangu's true body snorted coldly. He formed a seal with one hand and sent out a bolt of divine lightning towards the three of them. That lightning was the Du Tian divine lightning. It could split the world apart and was all-encompassing. It was the opportunity of creation, the source of destruction, and the source of all lightning techniques. It was the strongest lightning technique in the primordial world. Rumble. Wherever the Du Tian divine lightning passed, everything changed. The laws were changing and the world was being re-established. A mysterious world slowly spread out. It was magnificent and magnificent, enveloping Dijun and the other two. In this world, Dijun and the other two felt that their connate origins were constantly flowing away, becoming nutrients for this world to grow. What mystical ability is this? So powerful, unimaginably strong. This supernatural power ignored any defense and directly attacked the innate source. In the untainted land, it was simply unheard of and unimaginable to the extreme. The innate source was the foundation of everything. If the innate source was gone, it meant death. Furthermore, without the innate source energy, even if he did not lose his cultivation after his resurrection, his strength would plummet, and it would be difficult for him to recover to his peak state. Just like Tung Wangkang, although he was still the Daluo Jinxian after his resurrection, he was getting worse and worse. Kill! Knowing the consequences of losing their innate origin source, Dijun and the other two did not dare to hesitate. They immediately unleashed all of their strength and executed their strongest divine abilities to shatter the world in front of them. Boom! Under the full power of the three of them, the Du Tian world suddenly shattered and turned into a huge tide of destruction that continued to sweep towards them. Zhouxing formation, kill! Boundless starlight descended and transformed into a boundless river of stars. It was vast and mighty, and it annihilated the tide of destruction as it charged towards Pangu's true body. Insignificant. Pangu's true body grabbed at the void, and a vast light appeared and gathered into the shadow of a giant axe in his hand. He swung it down fiercely at the Zhouxing formation. In an instant, the world lost its meaning, and only a ray of light was left. It was incomparably dazzling and white, and nothing could be seen. Crack! After an unknown period of time, a loud, shattering sound suddenly came from the world, breaking the long silence. Looking in the direction of the sound, a huge crack appeared in the starry sky. The Zhouxing formation that the demon race had placed high hopes on was split open by Panga's true body with a single swing of his axe. Break! Without giving the demon race time to react, Pangu's true body swung his giant axe and swung it down again, destroying all the formation patterns in the sky. Without the connection of the formation patterns, the Zhousing formation could no longer be maintained and broke apart. Instantly, the heavenly cycle star streamers shattered one after another, and the demon gods spat out blood. Even the Zhousing formation dimmed significantly. The Zhousing formation was extremely powerful, and its backlash was equally shocking. Fortunately, the demon gods were all at Daluo Jinxian's level of cultivation, so they did not die on the spot and were only injured. Otherwise, they would have been reduced to dust on the spot. Hiss! Panga's true body is actually so powerful. Although they knew that Panga's true body was definitely powerful, they did not expect him to break the Zhousing formation that the demon race was so proud of with just 2 swings of his axe. Even a sage did not have such power, right? The witch race was so powerful that the demon race could not even retaliate. If nothing unexpected happened, the outcome of this battle was already set. The demon race was about to become history. However, the great masters had thought too much about this. The power of Panga's true body was so powerful because it was his first time appearing in the world. He had gathered the remnant power of Pangu in the primordial world, which led to his power surpassing that of a sage. However, this power was, after all, an external force. It wouldn't be long before it dissipated. If these great masters carefully observed Panga's true body, they would realize that his power was constantly weakening. No matter how strong Panga's true body was, it was not the real Panga's physical body. It was only forcibly condensed by the 12 ancestral sorcerers with the help of the formation. Due to the influence of the 12 ancestral sorcerers, Panga's true body could only unleash the power of a great perfection, primordial, chaos, Tao, realm cultivator. If he wanted to be stronger, the 12 ancestral sorcerers would have to continue increasing their power. The Zhousing formation was broken, and the impact was far greater than imagined. The entire starry sky was trembling, and pieces of debris fell from the stars, turning into meteorites that smashed onto the primordial world. It was unknown how many innocent creatures were harmed and how many people were killed. For a time, the primordial world was full of wails and devastation. What's that? On the Ziwei star, Feng Zichen had been staring at the Zhousing formation ever since the demon race activated it. He tried to remember all the changes of the Zhousing formation so that he could improve his galaxy cosmic light formation. Therefore, when the Zhousing formation was broken and the starry sky was unbalanced, Feng Zichen discovered a different aura from the deepest part of the starry sky. Curious, Feng Zichen took the opportunity when Di Jun's attention was completely attracted by the sorcerer tribe to release his divine thought. He followed the different aura and explored the depths of the starry sky. This is the embryo of a primordial treasure. There is a primordial treasure in the depths of the starry sky. Why have I never heard of it? In the depths of the starry sky, Feng Zichen discovered a Taoist embryo surrounded by endless starlight. In the Taoist embryo, he could clearly see a Taoist diagram depicting Zhousing. It was the primordial treasure, Zhousing diagram. It was the carrier of the Tao of stars, branded with the mark of Zhousing, recording the trajectory of Zhousing. It had all kinds of incredible power and infinite power. Chapter 272. The reason why the Zhousing formation was not a match for the 12 divine beings killing formation was that it lacked the Zhousing map as the main array. Although the He-Tu and the Luo Shu were extraordinary and hid the secrets of the Khanate 9 palaces, they were supreme treasures of the primordial world and recorded the flow of the primordial world's water veins. They were not compatible with Zhousing. Di Jun used the He-Tu and the Luo Shu to preside over Zhousing. How could he activate its full power? It was not surprising that the incomplete Zhousing formation was destroyed when it fought against the complete Du Tian divine beings killing formation. That's right, Zhousing is so important. It's normal for it to nurture a Khanate cardinal treasure. It's a big problem if it can't be nurtured. Zhouxing was the most important part of the primordial world. Only when the three lights were separated could there be the boundless space of the primordial world. Moreover, they corresponded to the Earth Spirit Cave one by one, releasing endless star essence and nurturing the countless living beings of the primordial world. It would not make sense if there was not a connate cardinal treasure suppressing such an important place. Tai was born with the Bell of Chaos, so the world thought that the Bell of Chaos was the supreme treasure that suppressed the boundless void. Little did they know that the connate cardinal treasure that truly suppressed Zhouxing had yet to be born and was still in the process of being nurtured. It was the supreme treasure in front of Feng Zichen, the Zhouxing map. It seems that this connate cardinal treasure was most likely not successfully nurtured. Otherwise, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Feng Zichen came from the future. Although he had never seen any treasures, he had heard of many of them. He had even heard of most of the famous connate spirit treasures in the primordial world, let alone the rarer connate cardinal treasure. If such a cardinal treasure really existed in the future, it was impossible for him to not have heard of it. From this, it could be deduced that such a connate cardinal treasure did not exist in the future. With that thought in mind, Feng Zichen grabbed a wisp of the Zhouxing map's aura and combined it with his memories from the future to use the connate 8 trigrams to deduce. The deduction method of the connate 8 trigrams was different from the deduction method that was passed down in the primordial world. It did not calculate through the heavenly Tao. Instead, he used the innate 8 phases to evolve the greater 1,000 universes and operate the laws of heaven and earth. He traversed through countless years and saw a trace of a secret from the mysterious and unknown future. I see. After a while, Feng Zichen finished his deduction and found out everything. In the near future, the great war between liches and demons would erupt. That battle was so terrifying that it was beyond imagination. The entire wilderness was shattered. Zhouxing, who was at the center of the battlefield, was not spared. The starry sky was shattered, and the heavenly cycle was in tatters. His source fell greatly. Countless small planets were completely shattered into pieces. As a result, Zhouxing was too busy to take care of himself. How could he spare the energy to create the Zhouxing map? Under the interference of the heavenly Tao, the innate origin of the Zhouxing diagram flowed backward and returned to the Zhouxing to repair the Zhouxing so that they would not collapse. At this point, the Zhouxing map, a connate cardinal treasure, had died before it was even born. It had completely dissipated in the primordial world. However, since I am here, how can I allow this to happen? The Zhouxing map, a connate cardinal treasure, is mine. A connate cardinal treasure that truly belonged to the Tao of Stars and could unify the Zhouxing map was extremely precious. Of course, Feng Zichen was not willing to give it up. It seems that I have to make a good plan. After taking one last look at the Zhouxing map, Feng Zichen slowly retracted his gaze. Dijun, today is the day you die. Kill. Pangu's real body raised the giant axe and swung it at Dijun and the other two. The axe was ordinary. There were no innate runes or aura of the great Tao. There was only unparalleled power, power that was beyond imagination. Under the axe, it seemed to be able to sever the great Tao, destroy all spells, and reopen the world. No matter how hard Dijun and the other two tried, they were only able to resist for a breath before they were sent flying and vomiting blood. Haha! Victory to the witch tribe! With a loud laugh, Pangu's real body chased after them. He took a big step forward and came in front of Dijun and the other two. He raised the Panga map in his hand and was about to kill the 3 of them. I am the Celestial Emperor. Who can kill me? The heavenly realm is of the same origin. Add to me. Looking at the Panga map that was chopping at him, Dijun's face was filled with madness. He suddenly formed a seal and attracted the origin of heaven and earth to add to his body. Rumble. Suddenly, a terrifying aura rose from Dijun's body, shocking the entire primordial world. At this moment, his strength rose to a brand new level, the primordial chaos Tao realm. It was the realm that many powerful people in the primordial world dreamed of, the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. The heavenly realm was a world that was countless times more powerful than the great Kiliacosm. Its origin was so powerful that other than the origin of Earth, nothing in the primordial world could compare to it. Therefore, no one in the primordial world found it strange that Di Jun had entered the primordial chaos Tao realm. If they didn't know that Di Jun had this trump card, how could the sages tolerate Di Jun suppressing them? Kill. Holding the sun god's sword, Di Jun suddenly swung it and slashed out a dazzling sword light. It was vast and boundless, illuminating the primordial world. Heaven and earth were completely white and lost their color. There was no doubt that this was the power of the Sword Tao. Not long after the Khanate Sword Tao was established, the Grand Master of Heaven, Di Jun Mingi, and the others had successively attained the Khanate Sword Tao, causing the power of the Khanate Sword Tao to multiply. You overestimate yourself. Pangu, the pinnacle of strength. Even though the true body of Pangu, that the ancestral which had transformed into, was far inferior to the real Pangu, its strength was also the limit of its realm. It was almost invincible in the same realm. Clang! With a gentle swing of the giant axe, a vast axe light poured out, shattering everything. It easily wiped out the sword light that was enough to kill a quasi-saint. Then the axe light did not weaken and slashed toward Di Jun. Seeing this, Di Jun hurriedly raised his sword to block. Crack! After a crisp sound, the Khanate divine sword that had followed him for countless years shattered into countless pieces and scattered into the primordial world, never to be seen again. At the same time, the axe light also dissipated. Sunstar, come! At this time, Tai also made a series of hand seals and absorbed the origin of the sun star into his body. Needless to say, the sun star's importance was self-evident. It was not difficult to create a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian with all its origin on a person. Kill. Behind Tai, a huge will slowly appeared and crashed toward Pangu's true body. This was the Tai wheel, the great wheel of the heavenly Tao. It was Tai's strongest technique and also his supreme achievement. Tai was the Tao. The Tai wheel, the wheel of Tao, was an incomparably perfect ring that represented no beginning and no end. Its body was covered with Khanate runes, symbolizing the endless rules of the primordial world. As the Tai wheel moved, these Khanate runes shone, triggering the power of the heavenly Tao, the rules of heaven and earth, and all the power of the primordial world. Chapter 273. This time, Pangu's true body blocked the Tai wheel, but it was not as easy as before. Humph! Although the Pangu true body managed to shatter the greater one wheel, he was pushed back by the huge force and could not help but let out a muffled groan. It was not that Tai's attack was stronger than Di Jun's. It was that after such a long time, Pangu's remaining strength had dissipated a lot, causing the strength of Pangu's true body to fall back to the primordial chaos Tao realm. His strength has fallen a lot. Everyone present was smart. How could they not sense such an obvious change? Chance. The strength of Pangu's true body is constantly weakening. As long as we continue to delay, we will have a chance to turn the tables. After thinking for a while, the three of them understood the reason. They immediately changed their strategy and stopped fighting Pangu's true body head-on. Instead, they used delaying tactics. They intended to delay until the strength of Pangu's true body declined to the extreme and achieve a desperate comeback. Unfortunately, Di Jun's plan was wrong. Although the strength of Pangu's true body was falling, what fell was the remaining strength of Pangu. His essence was still at the perfected primordial chaos Tao realm. In other words, when he reached the perfected primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian realm, the strength of Panga's true body would fall to the bottom and would not change at all. Just like that, Jun and the other two gave up fighting Panga's true body. Instead, they fought with him and gradually stalled for time. Thump, thump, thump. Suddenly a violent heartbeat sounded in Panga's true body. It beat according to some inexplicable Tao rhythm. It was incomparably grand, shaking the entire primordial world and resonating with all Taos. This was Panga's heart beating. It was not relying on the 12 divine wraith formation to condense Panga's true body and heart, but the true heart of Pangu. It belonged to the son of the great Tao, the father of the primordial world, Panga's heart. This was the true number one treasure of the primordial world. Dai. Every time Pangu's heart beat, it provided great power to Panga's true body. Clenching Panga's axe tightly, Panga's true body slashed at Jun and the other two with all his might. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 consecutive explosions, Jun, Tai, and Fushi were blown apart by Panga's real body. However, the 3 of them were the top great mediums in the untainted land. How could they die so easily? In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them reunited in the distance and reappeared in the world. Cough, cough. Although the 3 of them were still alive after suffering such heavy injuries, the power that had been added to their bodies had left their bodies, and they had fallen back to the quasi-saint realm. Kill! Panga's true body didn't say much as he was afraid of another mishap. He raised the giant axe in his hand and was about to deal the final blow to the 3 of them. It's about time. In the purple cloud palace, Tao ancestor Hongjun calculated and felt that Panga's remaining power had been exhausted by the ancestral magi and could no longer pose a threat to him. With a flash, he rushed toward the heavenly court. Stop! At the critical moment, Tao ancestor Hongjun suddenly appeared and blocked the giant axe that was slashing at Jun and the other 2, saving them. Hey, Tao ancestor Hongjun, what do you mean by this? Panga's true body couldn't help but be angry when he was suddenly stopped and asked Tao ancestor Hongjun. The demon clan maintains the order of the world. They have contributed to the untainted land and should not be destroyed. After sizing up Panga's true body for a while, Tao ancestor Hongjun said coldly, Hongjun, you! Pointing at Tao ancestor Hongjun, Panga's true body was so angry that he couldn't speak. I've long heard that Tao ancestor Hongjun has merged with the Tao with his body. He is fair and righteous and will not easily interfere in the matters of the untainted land. Today, I see that rumors are just rumors. They can't be trusted. After a while, Pangu's true body said with a mocking expression, but then his face suddenly darkened and he shouted coldly at Hongjun. Today the witch clan is under the orders of Father God to send troops to suppress the demon clan and stabilize the untainted land. Whoever dares to stop us will be the enemy of the witch clan. Hongjun, let me ask you, are you going to make way or not? At the end of his sentence, Panga's true body was filled with killing intent. The heavenly divine baleful chi surged out and swept through the surroundings. The poor Wei said that the demon clan has contributed greatly to the untainted land and should not be destroyed. Shaking his head, Tao ancestor Hongjun's tone did not change at all, as if he did not care about the threat of the witch clan at all. What a biased old man! Take my axe! Seeing that Tao ancestor Hongjun's attitude was so firm, Panga's true body was furious. He raised his axe and slashed it. Go back! Tao ancestor Hongjun waved his sleeve and a terrifying power erupted, knocking Panga's true body down from the heaven realm and onto the untainted land. After stabilizing himself, Panga's true body was about to point at Tao ancestor Hongjun and curse when he saw a purple light flash. Pangu's true body suddenly disappeared and the 12 ancestral witches appeared one after another. How could it be? This time the ancestral witches were well behaved. Looking at Tao ancestor Hongjun in the sky, they did not dare to say anything, even though they were furious. This, masters, teachers, strength is actually the strong? In the distance, the saints and many powerful people who saw this scene could not help but exclaim, such a powerful true body of Pango was actually defeated by Tao ancestor Hong Jun in one move. His strength was becoming more and more unfathomable. Greetings, master. At this moment, Di Jun and the other two walked forward and bowed to Tao ancestor Hong Jun. Get up. Nodding, Tao ancestor Hong Jun gestured to the three of them. From now on, the demon clan will rule the heavens and the witch clan will rule the earth. Within 100,000 years, there will be no more disputes. Looking at the demon clan and then the witch clan, Tao ancestor Hong Jun said, "Yes, I will follow master's orders." Di Jun and the other two hurriedly said in unison. This was obviously a good thing for the demon clan. They had no reason to refuse. Got it. Boys, let's go. We'll spare the demon clan this time. With Tao ancestor Hong Jun around, the 12 ancestral witches knew that they could not take advantage of him. With a wave of their hands, they recalled the witch clan army and left. All of you, take care of yourselves. After taking one last look at Di Jun and the other two, Tao ancestor Hong Jun also left. Hiss! This Panga's true body is so hard. As soon as he returned to the purple cloud palace, Tao ancestor Hong Jun's expression changed. He could not help but frown and shake his arms repeatedly. He was no longer as indifferent as before. When Tao ancestor Hong Jun dealt with Panga's true body, it was easy for him to disperse Panga's true body and break the 12 capital heaven divine wraith formation with a casual strike. However, that strike contained not only his power, but also the power of the heavenly Tao. That was why he was able to defeat Panga's true body in a single strike. Even so, Tao ancestor Hong Jun's arm, which was casting the spell, was still trembling from the huge recoil. If not for the fact that he had to take into account his image, he would have cried out on the spot. Fortunately, he held it in. Now that he had returned to the purple cloud palace and there was no one else around, Tao ancestor Hong Jun could cry out without caring about his image and not worry about being discovered by outsiders. Chapter 274. But fortunately, his painstaking efforts were not in vain. That move had completely shocked everyone in the untainted land. Presumably, after this time, the image of Hong Jun Taoist would become higher and more unfathomable in the eyes of the great mediums. No one would dare to disobey his orders. The demon clan, the wizard clan, how troublesome! Thinking of the wizard clan and the demon clan, even with Hong Jun Taoist cultivation, he could not help but have a headache. Alas, these sages, can't you just calm down and focus on your cultivation? Why do they have to get involved in these secular affairs and make the untainted land a mess? With Hong Jun Taoist cultivation, Zhuan Ti thought that he had done it secretly and no one could find out. But how could he hide from Hong Jun Taoist's eyes? Taoist Hong Jun was naturally well aware of the reason for that. Brother, Hong Jun Taoist has gone too far. He is so partial to the demon clan and humiliated the wizard clan. He is really a Tao ancestor. I used to think that he was a good person. In the Panga Hall, a group of ancestral sorcerers were cursing. A good person? How can Hong be a good person if he can live to this day? In the untainted land, there are good people. It's just that the real good people are all dead and have been slandered. Anyway, the dead can't speak and won't stand up to refute. Isn't it just slander by the living? Hearing everyone's words, Di Jiang sneered and said, Hong Jun Taoist has experienced many schemes to live to this day. If you think about it a little, you will know that he can't be a good person. Another name for a good person is a fool. Is Hong Jun a fool? Wasn't it? Doing good things in the untainted land was called smart. Being a good person in the untainted land was not a fool. There were so many bad people in the untainted land. Originally, everyone was the same and could not see any problems. But suddenly a good person appeared. With this comparison, everything was out. If those bad people did not plot against this good person, how could they live up to their identity as bad people? Isn't Hong Yun a good person? But look, after he died, who else wanted to avenge him except Shen Yuanzi? Those who were helped by him in the past didn't even show their faces. They all pretended to be deaf and dumb. He pretended not to see something that alarmed the entire primordial world. Do you see that? This is what happens to good people. Let's wait a little longer. It won't be long before bad words about Hong Yun spread in the untainted land. His reputation will be completely ruined. Otherwise, those connate divine demons who are helped by Hong Yun won't have the face to stay in the untainted land. Di Jiang had a thorough understanding of the innate god fiends' personalities. Good people had no chance of survival in the Great Desolate. All right, I've said so much, but I just want to tell you, in the untainted land, you can do good deeds, but you can't be a good person. Speaking of this, Di Jiang suddenly looked at Hutu and said to her sternly, especially you, the Lady of Earth's benevolence is already spreading in the primordial world. Big brother, I hope you can grasp the scale well and distinguish the boundary between good and bad. The red cloud mirror is right in front of us. Don't repeat his mistakes. Di Jiang was very helpless about his sister. Perhaps because of the influence of the earth, Hutu's personality was completely different from other ancestral sorcerers. There was no tyrannical aura at all. Instead, she was full of holy and auspicious aura. She was not like the sorcerer tribe at all. No, perhaps her appearance was the real appearance of the sorcerer tribe. Hutu was born with a benevolent heart. She was full of pity for all living beings in the untainted land. She had been doing things of merit in the untainted land and was loved and respected by all living beings in the untainted land. This was nothing. However, after Hong Yun died, Di Jiang could not help but worry. If Hutu continued like this, it was hard to guarantee that she would not be used by outsiders and follow in Hong Yun's footsteps. That was why the scene before his eyes had occurred. Big brother, don't worry. Hutu knows what to do. Hutu nodded and replied, It's good that you know what to do. Then I won't say anything more. However, the matter of the untainted land needs to be completed as soon as possible. Hong Juan's strength is unfathomable. It's far from what we can compete with. With him protecting the demon clan, it seems that our plan to destroy the demon clan won't work. Now, the only way is to find a way to increase the foundation of the sorcerer tribe and improve the strength of our tribe. After 100,000 years, we will destroy the demon clan in one fell swoop. At that time, even Hong Jun won't be able to say anything. During this period of time, I'll have to trouble you to work harder and strive to draw the untainted land map as soon as possible. Di Jiang stood up and said, For the sorcerer tribe, we will do our best. The ancestral sorcerers stood up and replied. Then they turned and left the Panga Hall. After this battle, the untainted land will never be peaceful again. On the coast of the East Sea, Feng Zichen looked at the sky that was gradually recovering and could not help but sigh. After the Second World War, the untainted land would usher in a series of changes. Every event had a far-reaching impact. It was enough to change the infinite future and produce countless variables. Hutu turned into reincarnation. The three pure ones separated. Chang'e flew to the moon. These unimaginable events would follow one after another. After these events, the human clan would also usher in the most terrifying and dangerous calamity since its birth. The demon clan slaughtered humans. It's time to make preparations. Sighing, Feng Zichen turned and returned to the human clan's ancestral temple to continue refining the human Dao imperial court. This was the inheritance treasure of the human clan. It was enough to establish a foundation for the human clan. He could not be careless. However, there was no hurry. Although Tao ancestor Hongjun had only stipulated that the sorcerer and demon clan could not fight for 100,000 years, the sorcerer and demon clan's anger had dissipated. They would not fight without preparing for millions of years. In other words, Feng Zichen still had at least 1,000,000 years to prepare. 100,000 years later, the human clan's ancestral temple suddenly erupted with resplendent light that shot into the clouds. Then the mighty power of the human Tao poured out and swept through the untainted land. Freeze! At the crucial moment, Feng Zichen took out the Hongming Daozhong and sealed the void in all directions. He covered up the commotion caused by the mighty power of the human Tao in time. In this way, the fluctuation of the mighty power of the human Tao did not alarm the untainted land and attract some malicious gazes. Of course, no matter how fast Feng Zichen's movements were, he could not hide it from Nuwa in the palace of Empress Hua. After all, the human clan's ancestral temple was right under her nose. Within the ancestral temple, in the deepest part of the boundless void, there was a huge divine city floating there quietly. The aura of the human Tao flowed all over it, releasing endless light that illuminated the entire void. That was the human Tao imperial court. After hundreds of thousands of years of hard work, Feng Zichen had finally succeeded in refining it. The human Tao imperial court, 1 city, 2 halls, 3 palaces for gates. It symbolized the meaning that Tao gave birth to 1, 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to all things. Chapter 275. The city referred to the human Tao imperial court itself, symbolizing the meaning of 1 origin. The 2 halls referred to the ancestral hall and sacred hall. The sacred hall enshrined Nuwa, the 5 elements sacred beasts, and the Daluo Jinxian of the human race. In the future, if a powerful figure appeared to protect the human race, they could also be enshrined there. The ancestral hall enshrined the martyrs of the human race, those who had sacrificed themselves heroically for the development of the human race. Although they were dead, their spirits were not extinguished. They would sleep in the ancestral hall, forever enjoying the incense offerings of the human race, waiting for the day they returned. The 2 halls, 1 for life and 1 for death, used life and death to evolve the Tao of Yin and Yang, explaining the principles of Yin and Yang. The 3 palaces were the human emperor, empress, and crown prince. They used the 3 to balance Yin and Yang, operating the 3 talents, symbolizing the Tao of the 3 talents. The 4 gates referred to the 4 gates of the east, west, north, and south. They corresponded with the 4 cardinal directions and represented the Tao of the 4 cardinal directions. The 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 planets, 8 trigrams, 9 palaces, and 10 directions. These Tao of heaven and earth were all represented by buildings in the human Tao imperial court. The human Tao imperial court was a divine city built with the chaos formation as the foundation. The buildings themselves naturally had extraordinary meaning, corresponding to the 10 connate Tao diagrams that formed the chaos formation. This was the human Tao imperial court, a divine city of the great Tao. It contained the truth of chaos and explained the mysteries of the great Tao. It was all-encompassing and gave birth to 10,000 Tao. Good. Only such a supreme treasure can be passed down from generation to generation and be the indestructible foundation of the human race. With this imperial court, no matter how harsh and difficult the environment the human race faces in the future, it can guarantee that the inheritance will not be lost. In Feng Zichen's eyes, the human Tao imperial court was not only a supreme treasure, but also the future of the human race, shouldering the heavy responsibility of strengthening the human race. Chaos bead come. Feng Zichen reached out, and the chaos bead automatically appeared in his hand, blooming with hazy light. Go. With a wave of his hand, Feng Zichen sent the chaos bead into the center of the human Tao imperial court. Immediately, Chaos chi surged out, and the connate Tao diagrams spread out one by one, forming a divine diagram of the great Tao and merging with the human Tao imperial court. Boom! The imperial court of human Tao's power was completely activated. Its light grew even more resplendent. Innate formation runes appeared. It was the chaos formation that had activated the imperial court of human Tao's power. Roar, roar, roar. At this moment, tens of thousands of spirits appeared and roared endlessly towards the sky. Vast divine might rumbled out and fully displayed the might of the imperial court of human Tao. Imperial court, the center of power of the world. Looking at the human Tao imperial court before him, Feng Zichen suddenly thought of something. In the future, regardless of the size of the imperial court, they all had imperial seals to show their legitimacy. He, the number one imperial court of the human Tao, lacked this item. In addition, the imperial jade seal's function was not as simple as symbolizing orthodoxy. It was also a symbol of power and had the ability to unify all forces. It could also suppress one's luck, making it the most suitable item to be used as a legacy treasure. With that in mind, Feng Zichen looked at the imperial court of human Tao again. For some reason, he felt like something was missing. It was no longer as perfect as before. That's true. Although the human Tao imperial court has been completed, it lacks something to suppress it. It can't gather all the forces. Even if I want to pass it down in the future, it will be extremely troublesome. Looks like I still have to refine this human Tao imperial jade seal. Thinking of the benefits of having an imperial jade seal, Feng Zichen was tempted and decided to refine one himself. In the future, the human race also had their own legacy treasure, the Kongtong seal. However, that was a supreme treasure nurtured by the era of the three emperors. It was still the era of the shamans and demons. Who knew how many years he would have to wait for it to appear. Therefore, to Feng Zichen, who was in a hurry to use it, the Kongtong seal was useless. Since I'm going to refine the human emperor's seal, I'll refine the best one. I'll make it a true supreme treasure of the human race and lead the primordial world races. I'll inherit the fate of the human race and completely replace the Kongtong seal. Feng Zichen had his own pride. It was fine if he did not refine it, but if he did, his seal had to be the number one in the primordial world. It completely represented the orthodoxy of the human race and the inheritance of the human race. As for how to deal with the Kongtong seal when it appeared in the future, Feng Zichen felt that with the human emperor's seal, why would he need the Kongtong seal? Anyway, in the future, although the Kongtong seal was a supreme treasure of the human race, it had never been truly controlled by the human race. From the beginning to the end, there was only one owner of the Kongtong seal, and that was the Grand Pure One. Even if the three emperors were at their peak and gathered the destiny of the human race and controlled the rise and fall of the 10,000 races, they were only holding the Kongtong seal on behalf of the Grand Pure One. They were far from being its true owner. Thinking about it, as the symbol of the human emperor, the Kongtong seal had gone through the 3 emperors and 5 emperors. It had gathered the destiny of countless humans. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the human race's race artifact. However, such an important treasure was not under the control of the human race. Wasn't that a joke? The human race had fought for countless years. Countless ancestors had sacrificed their heads and shed their blood for it. However, they had to give a share of the fruits of their labor to the Grand Pure One for him to enjoy. Not only that, after sharing the fruits of their labor, they had to be grateful to him. How could he tolerate this? Since that was the case, there was no need for the Kongtong seal. This was something that was extremely important to the human race, but was completely out of their control. Not only would it not be beneficial to the development of the human race, but it would also restrict the development of the human race. It would also help outsiders snatch the fruits of the human race's labor. Therefore, no matter how good the Kongtong seal was, if it could not be controlled by the human race, it could not be kept. Now, Feng Zichen was going to refine a human emperor's seal that truly belonged to the human race. He was going to use it as the inheritance treasure of the human race and completely destroy the Kongtong seal. At that moment, Feng Zichen's mind stirred, and he took out the panga's finger bone that he had obtained from the ruins of End. He had originally planned to enshrine the treasure in the ancestral temple to increase the destiny of the human race. However, now that he wanted to refine the human emperor's seal, was there any better material than the panga's finger bone? That was the best treasure in the primordial world. It was also the treasure that could represent the orthodoxy of the primordial world. In the primordial world, what treasure could represent orthodoxy more than the remnant body left behind by the creator of the world? No, the Pangu's remnant body was the most orthodox treasure in the primordial world. As for the treasure that could represent the orthodoxy of the primordial world, it was enough to represent the orthodoxy of the Tao, not to mention the orthodoxy of the human race. Compared to the Kongtong seal, it was like a firefly compared to the bright moon. There was no comparison at all. If not for the fact that the Tao runes in the Panga's finger bone had been completely lost, this treasure would have been enough to be refined into the heavenly emperor's seal and become the symbol of the entire primordial world. It would have been supreme and become a connate cardinal treasure in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, in order to destroy the chaos fiend celestial, the charm of the great Tao of this treasure had been completely lost. Apart from the indestructible bone body, there was nothing left. Otherwise, he could have directly turned into a connate cardinal treasure. There was no need for outsiders to refine it. Even so, the human emperor's seal, refined with the Panga's finger bone, would at least be a supreme grade connate cardinal treasure. It was much stronger than the Kongtong seal. Chapter 276. Connate was naturally stronger than postnatal. The so-called postnatal supreme treasures were comparable to connate spiritual treasures only in terms of power. They were far inferior in other aspects. As for postnatal supreme treasures that were more powerful than connate spiritual treasures, there were only a few. In the entire untainted land, there were only 3: Buddha Pagoda, Sky-throwing seal, and Kongtong seal. The materials of these 3 treasures were all top grade. Naturally, they could surpass ordinary connate spiritual treasures. But because of this, these 3 supreme treasures were not universal. They could only be found by chance. Otherwise, the limit of postnatal supreme treasures would not be to go against the connate and become connate spiritual treasures. Great Taoist priests, your junior Feng Zichen wants to refine the Emperor's seal to inherit the human path and maintain the order of all living beings. I hope great Taoist priests can help me. After placing Pangu's finger bone on the altar, Feng Zichen tidied his clothes and bowed respectfully. Panga's finger bone was so hard that Feng Zichen could not refine it. Even if he used a connate supreme treasure for hundreds of years, he would not be able to break it. Unless the top 10 chaos demon gods came, even if Tao ancestor Hongjun came, he might not be able to shatter it. The only way to refine Panga's finger bone was to pray to Pangu and ask him to refine it. That was why the current scene was happening. As for whether Pangu would agree or not, Feng Zichen was not worried at all. Not to mention that he was favored by Pangu. He still had the heavy responsibility that Pangu had given him. In order to give Feng Zichen some benefits, Pangu would not refuse. Sure enough, not long after Feng Zichen's request, Pangu's finger bone on the altar changed. There was a flash of purple light, and Pangu's finger bone gradually melted, forming a purple liquid. Pangu's finger bone was purple, because purple was the color of the great Tao. It was the most honorable color in the world. Thank you, great Taoist priests, for your help. Seeing the changes in Panga's finger bones, Feng Zichen hurriedly bowed. From now on, Zichen will definitely protect the untainted land and repay the kindness of the great Taoist priests. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen swore. As for words of thanks, Feng Zichen didn't say them. There was no need for him to say them. Speeding up the evolution of the primordial world and protecting its safety was the greatest reward for Pangu. No matter how much he expressed his gratitude in words, it was not as practical as his actions. Of course, even if Feng Zichen didn't guarantee anything, Pangu wouldn't care. That was because Pangu's love for the primordial world was selfless. He did not need the gratitude of all living beings. The gratitude of all living beings was meaningless to him. Chaos bead. After staring at the purple liquid in front of him for a long time, Feng Zichen called softly and recalled the chaos bead from the human Tao imperial court. Although Pangu's finger bone was good, he had lost his Taoist runes after all. Even if it was refined into the human emperor's seal, other than suppressing fate and being incomparably hard, it had no other abilities. That wasn't what Feng Zichen wanted. What he wanted was a powerful connate, supreme treasure that could suppress all worlds. He didn't want a connate numinous treasure that was useless other than being hard. Therefore, Feng Zichen took out the chaos bead. He wanted to use the chaos bead as the core and Pangu's finger bone as the main body to create a human emperor's seal that could carry the entire human Tao imperial court. With the support of the mighty power of human Tao, it would completely transform into a human supreme treasure. Feng Zichen believed that the chaos bead, which was already a half-step connate supreme treasure, would definitely be promoted to a connate supreme treasure after fusing with Pangu's finger bone. Even if it couldn't, it would be enough with the mighty power of human Tao. In fact, Feng Zichen was still a little worried about the chaos bead being promoted to a connate supreme treasure. He was afraid that the heavenly Tao wouldn't allow the chaos bead to exist. This wasn't a conclusion he came to by random guesses. There were precedents to follow. The heavenly Tao had always been extremely afraid of chaos supreme treasures. This was because their powerful power was enough to interfere with the operation of the primordial world and destroy the balance of the world. Therefore, the heavenly Tao would definitely not allow the existence of chaos supreme treasures. Even if it was possible, it wouldn't allow it. The 36th grade chaos green lotus had contributed greatly when Pangu opened the world. In the primordial world, it could be called a heaven-opening sacred artifact. However, it was because of this that the connate supreme treasure left behind by the chaos green lotus, the 24th grade creation green lotus, was completely destroyed by the heavenly Tao with the help of the three pure ones, because it had the possibility of growing into a chaos green lotus. From this, it could be seen that the heavenly Tao was afraid of chaos supreme treasures. It didn't even let go of heaven-opening sacred artifacts. And the chaos green lotus with such a status was shattered by the heavenly Tao. If the chaos bead, whose status was far inferior to the chaos green lotus, wanted to advance to a connate supreme treasure, his outcome would probably be even worse. He might directly attract the most terrifying heavenly punishment and be destroyed on the spot, completely disappearing. However, after fusing with Pangu's finger bone and the support of the power of the human Tao, the heavenly Tao might not dare to destroy the chaos bead. Between the heavenly Tao and the human Tao, Feng Zichen felt that the heavenly Tao should be stronger. However, Feng Zichen knew that the heavenly Tao would never attack the human Tao. The three paths of heaven, earth, and human were formed by Pangu's essence, energy, and spirit. According to the principles of cultivation, among the three of essence, energy, and spirit, spirit was the highest, followed by qi, and essence was the lowest. Therefore, the heavenly Tao was the strongest, followed by the earth Tao, and then the human Tao. However, the path of cultivation was to refine essence into qi, and refine qi into spirit. From this, it could be seen that essence gave birth to life, and qi gave birth to spirit. Essence was the foundation of qi and spirit. In other words, although the human Tao was the weakest among the three paths, it was the foundation of the earth Tao and the heavenly Tao. Without the heavenly Tao, a new heavenly Tao might be born if the human Tao and the earth Tao worked together. However, without the human Tao, the earth Tao and the heavenly Tao would lose their foundation. They would probably lose the meaning of existence and completely disappear. The primordial world would also be destroyed. Therefore, Feng Zichen was sure that the heavenly Tao would not attack the human Tao. Perhaps in the end, the heavenly Tao could only pinch its nose and admit the existence of the Khanate cardinal treasure, the chaos bead. No, at that time it would no longer be the chaos bead, but the human emperor's seal. The human race will prosper. After shouting silently, Feng Zichen first placed the chaos bead into the purple liquid. Then he activated the power of the human Tao and began to refine the human emperor's seal. Since he was going to refine a human Tao treasure, it was definitely the most suitable one. It would definitely be stronger and more perfect than the human emperor's seal that Feng Zichen had refined. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen gritted his teeth and stripped the human emperor's Tao seat from his body and fused it into the human emperor's seal that was being refined. As the symbol of the human emperor, if it did not have the imperial purple qi, how could it suppress the four seas and control the universe? Not only that, after fusing the human emperor's Tao seat, the next person who held the human emperor's seal in the future would be able to reach the late stage of the sage-to-be and become the human emperor. This seal had completely become the symbol of the human emperor. The human emperor's seal was not an artifact of a person, but an artifact of a race. Only then could it become a true inheritance treasure. Chapter 277. The human emperor's seal and the human emperor's imperial court were inherited treasures that Feng Zichen had specially refined for the human race. Fortunately, after he left the human race, they continued to protect the human race for him. Therefore, Feng Zichen naturally did his best to refine them. He used the best treasures he had. His path was in the boundless starry sky, in the center of the universe, in the wonderful primordial world, and not in this corner of the human race. He had to leave the human race in the end. After the massacre, Feng Zichen would leave the human race and return to the Ziwei star, waiting for the end of the shaman and demon tribulation. After that, he would return to the primordial world as the great emperor of Ziwei and create his own legend. Now, he would do his best to do whatever he could for the human race so that he would not have any regrets in the future. Khanate cardinal treasures were born from the creation of heaven and earth. They contained the truth of the universe and were true treasures of heaven and earth. In theory, Khanate cardinal treasures were the same as primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. The amount of effort required to refine a Khanate supreme treasure was absolutely astonishing. Fortunately, Feng Zichen was only responsible for providing the materials for the human emperor's seal. The rest was refined by the human emperor himself. Otherwise, if Feng Zichen refined it himself, even if he had all the materials and exhausted all his effort, he would not be able to refine it. Just like that, another 10,000 years passed. The refinement of a Khanate cardinal treasure was too difficult. With sufficient preparation, even with the human emperor's ability, it took 10,000 years to refine it successfully. Is this a Khanate cardinal treasure? It's indeed extraordinary. At this moment, in front of Feng Zichen, the chaos bead and Penga's finger bone had long disappeared. Only a large purple seal was left. This was the human emperor's seal, a Khanate cardinal treasure. A Khanate cardinal treasure refined by the human emperor could represent the human emperor's will and carry the human emperor's seal. The human emperor's seal was not only the seal of the human race, but also the seal of the human race. It was the symbol of the human race's supreme power. It represented supreme power and could dominate all races and mobilize the power of all spirits. Of course, Feng Zichen did not dare to mobilize the power of all races. Did he really think that the shamans and demons were gone? If he really mobilized the power of all races, the experts of the shamans and demons would sense it and kill Feng Zichen before he could do so. In the last battle, the shamans and demons had declared the human emperor's majesty. They did not fear of the saints. Therefore, Feng Zichen had no ability to resist the shamans and demons. Emperors, emperors, emperor's seal. Emperor's seal, emperor's seal. Times had changed. Perhaps in the future, when the era of the liches had passed, the human emperor's seal would be able to unleash its full power. But now they couldn't. The light of the shamans and demons was too dazzling, overshadowing everything. Even saints couldn't compete with them, let alone connate cardinal treasures. Emperor, as shamans as God, as shaman his shaman was shamans. Just to wait. The S races. Withdrawing his unnecessary thoughts, Feng Zichen looked at the emperor's seal. That was a connate cardinal treasure, the top Dharma treasure in the untainted land. It was his first time seeing it. The emperor's seal floated quietly in the air. There was no great Tao, no Dharma, and no strange phenomenon. Apart from the soft purple light that lingered around his body, which was showing his mysticism, he looked ordinary and could not even be compared to an ordinary acquired spirit treasure. However, this inconspicuous seal was a connate cardinal treasure that all living beings in the untainted land dreamed of. There were less than 10 of them in the entire untainted land. Return to nature. Only this sentence could explain the current state of the emperor's seal. Feng Zichen reached out and touched the emperor's seal. Boom! At this moment, the human emperor's seal erupted. It was like a resplendent galaxy. Incomparably dazzling light bloomed from its body. Galaxy after galaxy fell from his body, carrying countless stars. It was magnificent and exuded a terrifying aura. It swept through the vast void and even intimidated the heavens and shook the great thousand universe. For a time, countless people in the untainted land trembled and fell to the ground. They could not help but submit to it from their souls. They wanted to kowtow to it as if they were facing an emperor. The human path was all spirits. The human emperor was the emperor of all spirits. The emperor's seal was the symbol of the human emperor. It was what he relied on to control all spirits. Therefore, when the emperor's seal appeared, it was like the arrival of the human emperor. All spirits instantly sensed it and wanted to worship it to show their respect. Then, the galaxy became brighter and brighter, emitting a monstrous pressure. The countless stars it carried also became bigger and bigger, revealing their true appearance. Those stars were not stars at all. They were clearly enormous figures. Because they were emitting a dazzling light, they looked like bright stars from afar. These figures were all spirits. They were the external manifestation of the human path. They contained endless power and wanted to destroy everything and return the world to its original point. They were like gods and demons that had descended. They were high and mighty, as if they wanted to tear the earth apart. It was also like a vast world that had lost control and wanted to tear the entire universe apart. The aura of destruction soared. Even the great divines were shocked. This power was too terrifying. It was enough to shake one's heart and make one unable to resist. Even the world was trembling. A connate cardinal treasure was born. Moreover, it was a cardinal treasure that belonged to the human path. At this moment, a realization appeared in the hearts of many great divines, allowing them to know the reason for the matter. Connate cardinal treasure. Where is it? Without any hesitation, the great divines moved. Powerful divine thoughts rose from their bodies and swept through the entire untainted land, trying to find the location of the human path cardinal treasure. Boom! Under their divine thoughts, the entire untainted land was shaking. The void creaked as if it could not bear the weight. Even the operation of the rules of heaven and earth was temporarily stagnant. The living beings of the untainted land were pressed to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Their hearts were filled with extreme fear, thinking that the world was about to end. Unfortunately, these great divines were disappointed. They searched every corner that they could search, but they did not find any trace of the Khanate cardinal treasure. If it were not for the remnant aura of the Khanate cardinal treasure that was leaked when it was born, they would have thought that what they sensed just now was an illusion. Forget it. In the end, it's not fated with us. After a few sighs, the divine thoughts that were wandering in the void retreated one after another. The untainted land returned to peace. The shadow of death that covered the hearts of all living beings slowly dissipated. The Khanate cardinal treasure was flawless and contained a complete, great Tao. It was the most perfect existence in the untainted land. Its essence was equivalent to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. In other words, a Khanate cardinal treasure was equivalent to a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Chapter 278. Primordial Chaos Daluo Jinxian's Khanate origin was the embryo of a Khanate supreme treasure. Even if Khanate supreme treasures had all kinds of restrictions, their essence was still higher than that of great divinities. In this way, how could those great divinities calculate the whereabouts of Khanate supreme treasures? As for saints, they couldn't calculate the whereabouts of Khanate supreme treasures. Khanate supreme treasures couldn't develop intelligence and couldn't transform. Because of this, they had the strength of saints but couldn't take the initiative to use it. As the saying went, there were gains and losses. Although Khanate supreme treasures had lost the possibility of transforming, they had achieved unimaginable achievements in shielding the heavenly secrets. Unless a Khanate supreme treasure appeared on its own, even if saints turned the entire primordial world upside down, they wouldn't be able to find any traces of Khanate supreme treasures. Otherwise, the two saints Zhu and Ti would have searched the primordial world for Khanate supreme treasures long ago. They wouldn't be sitting peacefully on Mount Meru like now, drooling at the Khanate supreme treasures in the hands of the three pure ones. They really couldn't find them. Holding the human emperor's seal in his hand, Feng Zichen had a feeling that he wasn't holding the human emperor's seal, but the entire race. At this moment, he seemed to be able to control the rise and fall of all races and the life and death of countless living beings. Of course, Feng Zichen knew that this was just an illusion. Controlling the life and death of all living beings was the power of the true human emperor, and he was only the emperor of the human race. He still had a long way to go before he could become the human emperor. He was far from being able to do this now. At most, he could control the life and death of the human race and borrow the power of all living beings. Rise! He sank his mind into the human emperor's seal. In an instant, everything about the human emperor's seal was reflected in Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness. That's right, it was the human emperor's seal. Apart from being a supreme treasure of the human race, the human emperor's seal was also the center of the human emperor's seal. It controlled everything about the human emperor's seal. Rise! Rumble! The entire human emperor's seal was shaking. The chaos formation was activated, and the great Tao divine diagram slowly spread out. Chaos chi surged out, and the phantoms of all living beings appeared one after another. Then the human emperor's figure suddenly disappeared from this place and appeared in the sky above the East Sea. The imperial dynasty was vast and boundless. The moment it appeared, it covered the sun, causing the East Ocean to sink into darkness. The changes in the sky immediately caught the attention of the human race. Then, what's that? Looking at the huge divine city in the sky, the clansmen fell into deep shock. They had lived on the shores of the East Ocean for a long time and had never seen such a vast and majestic imperial dynasty. They were already really calm that they didn't exclaim, "Is this the imperial court your majesty mentioned? It's unimaginably powerful. It's us who are ignorant." The ordinary clansmen didn't know what this was, But the elders of the human race understood the origin of the imperial court in the sky after some thought. If there were no surprises, this was the human emperor who had gone against the wishes of the masses to establish the imperial court of the human race. Just by looking at it from afar, even with their Tai Jinxian cultivation, they felt a sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts. From this, it could be seen how powerful this imperial court was. Thinking back to what they had said to Feng Zichen earlier, it seemed a bit laughable now. Perhaps they were really old and couldn't keep up with the times. Ignoring the clansman's shock, Feng Zichen didn't show himself. Instead, he took out a fishing net. Now, the human emperor's imperial court wasn't complete yet. He still needed to make some preparations. Behind Feng Zichen, the world tree appeared silently. It lowered the world origin and burned the fishing net in Feng Zichen's hand. At the same time, the human emperor's seal also trembled. It spewed out chaos origin and burned the fishing net. The chaos bead was only the core. Feng Zichen had refined it into the human emperor's seal. Its essence hadn't been destroyed and still existed. It was just that its appearance had changed. Moreover, after transforming into the human emperor's seal, the chaos bead had completely advanced to a connate treasure. It nurtured even more chaos origin. Not only that, the chaos bead's characteristics didn't disappear with its change. It could still absorb the fragments of the past and continue to advance. The fishing net in Feng Zichen's hand was none other than the net that had captured Ao Shui back then. It was the first net in the primordial world, an acquired merit numinous treasure. He took out this net, just like how he refined the Swerin lamp back then. He wanted to refine another inheritance treasure for the human race, an inescapable net. Before this net, there was no net-shaped numinous treasure in the primordial world. In other words, this net had great luck and great merit. A treasure refined with it could definitely seal all directions and trap all living beings. It couldn't be more appropriate to call it an inescapable net. Now, Feng Zichen's cultivation had far surpassed before. Refining such a numinous treasure didn't require as much effort as before. Not long after, the fishing net completely merged with the luck of the human race and became a new inheritance treasure. Go! Throwing out the inescapable net, Feng Zichen nodded in satisfaction as he watched it expand and envelop the human emperor's palace. After being enveloped by the inescapable net, the radiance on the human emperor's palace gradually dimmed. It became less eye-catching and ordinary. Compared to the ordinary cities in the primordial world, there was no difference other than floating in the air. Now that the human race was weak, it was better not to be too ostentatious. It was better to accumulate food and slowly become king. Elders, the human emperor's palace has been completed. Do you want to follow me to take a look? Looking at the human elders who were filled with emotion, Feng Zichen asked, "Of course. Such a supreme treasure is the first time we've seen it in our lives. If we don't take a look, wouldn't we regret it for the rest of our lives?" The elders nodded and said excitedly, to them, even connate numinous treasures were rare, let alone a supreme treasure like the human emperor's palace. Elders, you must be joking. Smiling, Feng Zichen led the elders into the palace. While Feng Zichen was in seclusion to refine the human emperor's palace, the primordial world also quietly changed. On Kunlun Mountain, the conflict between the disciples of the Chan sect and the Jie sect became more and more irreconcilable. The disciples of the two sects quarreled all day, turning the peaceful holy land of Kunlun Mountain into a wet market. Insults were endless. If not for Xianqing suppression, the disciples of the two sects would have already fought each other. However, even so, as the conflict between the two sides deepened, it had already affected the saints. Because of this, the Grand Master of Heaven and the Primordial Lord of Heaven had already quarreled several times. The three pure ones were not far away from splitting up. On the sun, Tai's aura was even stronger. Behind him, The Tai wheel rose slowly, operating the supreme truths of the heavenly Tao, reflecting the rules of the world and encompassing everything in the universe. As it spun, it seemed as if countless worlds were born and destroyed in it, deducing all kinds of truths. It was extremely terrifying. Chapter 279. A flawless, primordial, and supreme Tao rune emanated from Donghuang Tai's body. It distorted endless time and space and changed the laws of heaven and earth. Clearly, after the last battle, Donghuang Tai's strength had improved again. He was not far from the primordial chaos Tao realm and could step into it at any time. Tai was born with the bell of chaos. He could be said to be the true son of an era. In the primordial world, whether it was the past or the future, there was no one else who was born with a connate cardinal treasure other than him. Even the first connate life form born in the primordial world, Taoist Hongjun, was far inferior to Tai when he was born. The 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans of Pango did not have connate cardinal treasures when they were born. It could be said that Tai's treatment when he was born was the best in the primordial world. No one could compare to him. Logically speaking, Tai, who was born with such a halo, should be the most dazzling light in the primordial world, suppressing everything. In fact, it was the same. Ever since Tai descended, no one of his peers could compete with him. He defeated all his enemies, suppressing his peers until they could not breathe. Under his brilliance, they were overshadowed. If the 3 pure ones and the others had not received the help of Hongming's purple qi and reached the heavens in one step, becoming saints, Tai's strength was still the best in the primordial world. With Tai's talent, even if he could not become a saint, he could become a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. But now he was still in the quasi-saint realm and had not taken that crucial step. This was completely because the heavenly court was dragging him down. That's right, it was the heavenly court's burden. To Di Jun and the others, the establishment of the heavenly court had great benefits. It could allow them to use the providence of heaven and earth to cultivate, improve their comprehension, and quickly break through to a higher realm. But it was different for Tai. He did not need the help of the providence of heaven and earth at all, because his comprehension was the best in the primordial world. There was no way for him to improve. Instead, after the establishment of the heavenly court, countless karma gathered and dragged down Tai's cultivation. It made him unable to transcend heaven and earth and achieve primordial chaos. He could not break through to the primordial chaos Tao realm. In the eyes of outsiders, it was the heavenly court that made Tai Yi Donghuang famous. But the truth was that the celestial court was a burden to Tai, preventing him from becoming the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. However, Tai was still Tai in the end. In the battle with Panga's true body, he had profited from the disaster and comprehended the chaos Tao insight. He believed that it would not be long before he could take another step forward and become the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. At that time, it would be a grand occasion in the primordial world. Something had happened to the demon clan, and the witch clan was no exception. Strolling in the western land of the primordial world, Hutu could not help but look sad. This sorrowful expression was for the western continent. As the mother of the earth, the emotions of the West could not be hidden from her senses. The resentment hidden in the depths of the earth was clearly transmitted into his heart, causing a wave of sadness to surge out from his heart. Wisps of holy light bloomed from Huta's body and surged towards the western continent, spreading for hundreds of millions of miles. It purified the tribulation aura, murderous aura, resentment aura, and a series of hidden auras. This was the origin of the earth, the foundation of Hutu. It was formed by her cultivation and was her innate origin. In other words, she was saving the western continent at the cost of damaging her own origin. Even if Huta's strength was not the best in the primordial world, she could still be ranked at the top of the first rate. Her innate origin was naturally extraordinary. If all of it was taken out, it would be a top-grade innate spirit treasure. Even if it was only a part, it would be easy to help a cultivator at the peak of Tai Jinxian break through to the Daluo Jinxian. If such a miraculous treasure was integrated into any place, it could create a blessed land. But in the Western continent, it could not. The battle back, then, had completely destroyed the Western continent, causing the land here to almost lose the possibility of recovery. Although Huta's strength was powerful, she was still much weaker than the demon ancestor Rahu. The demon ancestor Rahu had done everything he could to self-destruct. How could the Hutus sacrifice a part of her innate origin to make up for the damage? If the Western continent could be repaired with the Earth's origin alone, Jain would have done such a simple thing in advance. How could he sit back and watch the Western continent decline? After all, with their strength, it was not difficult to find the Earth's origin. The Earth's origin was really useless. In order to revive the Western continent, they had used all the methods they could think of. As a treasure of the Earth's origin was naturally used at the first moment. But unfortunately, it was useless. No method was useful. At this point, unless there was a huge change in the Western continent, there was no way for it to recover. Otherwise, Tao ancestor Hongjun would not have taken out 2 saint positions to resolve this karma. Hutu wanted to use her own innate origin to repair the Western continent, but she was thinking too much. In the depths of the earth, a powerful resentment suddenly surged out. With the power to erode everything, it destroyed the earth that had been repaired by the front and back earth, restoring it to the previous ruined place. Sai, the destruction caused by the great war of immortals and demons is so terrifying. Countless years have passed, but there is still no chance of the Western continent recovering. The change in front of her was not beyond her expectations. With her cultivation, how could she not know that her innate origin was useless? But that was not the reason why she did not act. If she tried, she might fail. But if she did not try, she would never succeed. Perhaps Father God will have a way. As she sighed, Huta's eyes lit up as she thought of a possibility. The primordial world was formed by Panga's flesh and blood. They did not have the ability to repair the primordial world, but Pangu definitely could. Pangu was omnipotent. This was recognized by the primordial world. Father God, Hutu has offended you. After bowing to the void, Hutu formed a Tao seal and invited Pangu's heart from Pangu's hall. Panga's heart was the greatest gift that Pangu had left for the Magi. It was also the reason why the 12 ancestral Magi were confident that they were more orthodox than the 3 pure ones. Otherwise, why would they have Pangu's hall, the 12 divine beings' formation, and Panga's heart? As for the 3 pure ones, other than the heaven opening mark, only the mysterious yellow pagoda of heaven and earth was inferior to them. Pangu's heart was indeed the most precious treasure of the Magi and the primordial world. Usually, the Magi would worship him in Panga's hall and not use him unless it was a critical moment. Today, Hutu could invite Pangu's heart not to repair the Western continent, but to draw a map of the primordial world. The damage to the Western continent was too severe. It was almost impossible to restore the ancient landscape and draw a map of the primordial world. Therefore, the Magi planned to use the ability of Panga's heart to communicate with the Western continent and find the most primitive landscape of the ancient West from the remaining historical traces. Chapter 280. The drawing of the map of the primordial world was related to the future of the Magi. It was of great importance. For that it was worth inviting Panga's heart. However, the Magi planned to draw the map of the primordial world. However, when the Lady of Earth saw that the western land was barren, she suddenly felt benevolent. She wanted to repair the western land while drawing the map of the primordial world. If the other ancestral Magi knew about it, it would be terrible. One had to know that Pangu had already transformed into the world. The heart he had left behind had long lost its endless power. the power that Panga's heart had now been accumulated over countless years. Every bit that was consumed required a lot of time to recover. If not for that, the Magi would have long unified the primordial world with Panga's heart. Not to mention the demons. Even a saint might not be able to resist the power of Panga's heart. How could she worship Panga's heart in the Panga Hall like now? Unless she had no choice, she would not use it. In the primordial world, the stronger the power, the more restricted it would be to prevent breaking the balance that the heavenly Tao was trying to maintain. If she used the power of Panga's heart to repair the Western land, it was hard to say if she could repair it. However, the power that Panga's heart had accumulated over so many years would definitely be exhausted. Then, the Magi would suffer a huge loss. Therefore, if the other ancestral Magi knew what the Lady of Earth was thinking, they would definitely not allow her to mess around. Unfortunately, they did not know. Of course, they would not have thought that the Lady of Earth would use the power of Panga's heart without their consent. Go. After taking out Panga's heart, the Lady of Earth cut her wrist and dripped her blood essence on it. As the direct descendant of Pango, the ancestral Magi could use their blood essence as a guide to maximize the power of Panga's heart. Dong! 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 In an instant, Panga's heart seemed to have come alive. It began to beat violently and burst out with a bright purple light that enveloped the mountains and rivers within a radius of billions of miles. The sound of the heartbeat wasn't loud at first, but as time passed, it gradually resonated with the world. First, the laws of heaven and earth pulsated, and then the great Tao pulsated as well. The entire Western continent was shaking. Heaven and earth produced an indescribable Tao rhythm. Countless strange phenomena appeared in the Western continent at the same time. It was brilliant and varied, and it attracted the attention of countless Western creatures. What? On Mount Meru, Zhuanti and Jane, who were meditating on the great Tao, were shocked out of their meditation by the sudden change. That's Hutu. What is he doing? What are the treasures around him? As soon as they came back to their senses, their eyes were attracted by Hutu. There were only 2 of them in the west. Hutu's strength was as dazzling as the sun when she came to the west. It would be strange if they did not discover her. That's Panga's heart. There's no mistaking it. This aura is incomparably powerful, incomparably imposing, incomparably holy, making us feel ashamed of our inferiority. Only the great Taoist priests can do this. This is Panga's heart. In just a moment, Zhuanti and Jane recognized the origin of Panga's heart. In the untainted land, only Panga's strength could make saints feel ashamed of their inferiority. Hutu is repairing the Western continent. She is actually using Panga's heart to repair the Western continent. Is she crazy? She is repairing the ancestral bloodline of the West at the cost of the wizard tribe's strength. What benefits does she get by doing this? But the next discovery shocked and surprised Zhuanti. Hutu did not hesitate to consume the foundation of the wizard tribe to strengthen the Western continent. Didn't it sound ridiculous? Was Hutu an idiot? Perhaps Zhuanti and Jane had schemed too much, and their hearts had gradually changed. They had forgotten that there were people in this world who had great love and selfless dedication. In their eyes, Hutu's actions were really absurd and ridiculous. Wisps of purple light flowed out of Panga's heart and poured into the Western continent, constantly repairing the damaged earth veins. Pangu was in existence on par with Tao. His strength could no longer be called strength. It could be called Tao Aura, which contained the power of Tao. Under this power, the resentment in the depths of the Western continent that could not be eliminated slowly dissipated, causing a new trace of vitality to appear on the Western continent. As the resentment of the earth dissipated, the Western ancestral bloodline, which had not moved since the end of the ancient times, suddenly fluctuated under Mount Meru. There was a wisp of vitality. Although it was weak, it really existed and represented infinite possibilities. The Western continent is saved. Seeing this wisp of vitality, Xuanti could not help but shout excitedly. As long as this wisp of vitality was not lost, the Western ancestral bloodline would completely recover one day. As for how long it would take, it would depend on the ability of Xuanti and Jane. Roar! A resonant dragon's roar rang out, bringing with it the joy of regaining life. It spread throughout the entire Western continent. This was the sound of the Western ancestral bloodline. Suddenly, a golden rain fell from the sky, washing away the murderous aura and tribulation aura that filled the Western lands. The entire Western continent was cleared. Buzz! At this moment, Panga's heart suddenly trembled for a moment. He retracted all the strange phenomena, broke through the void, and returned to Panga's palace. It was because only a few 100,000 years had passed since the last great Witch Demon War. The power that Panga's heart had consumed had not fully recovered. The power required to restore the Western continent was enormous. In just a short while, it had consumed 70 to 80% of the remaining power of Panga's heart. Panga's heart was the backup plan that Pangu had left for the sorcerer tribe. Realizing that his power had been severely depleted, he would not allow Hutu to cause trouble. He immediately retracted his power and returned to Panga's palace. No matter what the situation was, Panga's heart would retain 10% of its power in case anything happened to the sorcerer tribe and he was unable to help. This was the last guarantee that Pangu could make for the sorcerer tribe. Hutu, alas! In Pangu's palace, as soon as Panga's heart returned, Dijiang sensed the change in his body. At that moment, Dijiang's face changed directly. He became extremely angry, and his face was full of anger. The void was turbulent because of it, and layers of ripples were formed. But after that he sighed helplessly and sat back down. After all, it was the responsibility of the sorcerer tribe to protect the untainted land. They had failed to do anything since the Western continent had been destroyed. What Hutu did today was not wrong. Dijiang had no reason to blame her. That's not right. The Lady of Earth was wrong. That was, she didn't discuss it with the Dijiang and the others beforehand. Chapter 281. Rumble. Although Panga's heart had left, the changes in the Western land did not stop. Khanate Chi spewed out from under Mount Meru and spread towards the entire Western land. Under this influence, a touch of green gradually appeared in the barren Western land. It was the Khanate spiritual medicine. Since the end of the ancient times, the Khanate spiritual medicine had finally appeared in the Western land again. In the past, not to mention the Khanate spiritual medicine, even ordinary Khanate spiritual herbs were rare. It was considered good fortune to be able to see one within a radius of 100,000 miles. The reappearance of the Khanate spiritual medicine was enough to show that Hutu's efforts were effective. The Western land had regained its vitality and was developing in a good direction. Whoosh! After the changes in the Western land ended, a ray of light flew out from the deepest part of the land and entered Hutu's body. It was a memory hidden in the depths of the earth. It recorded the changes of time, the evolution of the earth, and endless creation. Moreover, it also recorded the purpose of Hutu's visit, the map of the Western land of the primordial world. This also made Hutu heave a sigh of relief. In order to repair the Western land, she had almost exhausted the power of Panga's heart. If she had not obtained the map of the Western land, even if she was an ancestral wizard, she would not be able to explain herself when she returned to the wizard tribe. One must know that Panga's heart did not belong to her alone, but to the entire wizard tribe. She did not discuss with the other ancestral wizards and used the power of Panga's heart to repair the Western land without authorization. This was obviously a little overboard. Even if the other ancestral wizards did not say anything, they would still be dissatisfied in their hearts, and it would affect the unity of the wizard tribe. The unity of the 12 ancestral wizards was the foundation of the wizard tribe's domination of the primordial world. if their hearts were scattered. The wizard tribe was not far from extinction. Since her purpose of coming here had been achieved, the resentment in the hearts of her brothers and sisters should be reduced a lot. Just as Hutu was thinking about this, a change occurred in the sky again. A bright golden light appeared. It was boundless and covered the sky, illuminating the western land with a golden color. Even in the void, countless lotus flowers appeared, swaying and emitting a fragrance. The heaven and earth merit chi had arrived. The western land was revitalized, making the primordial world more perfect. This was a great merit. The endless creatures of the west benefited from this, opening up their Tao paths. This was a great virtue. Just like that, the heavens and earth immediately reacted and sent down boundless merit as a reward. This merit was even more than the merit that Feng Zichen obtained when he established the Khanate Sword Tao and the three pure ones established the three sects. It was second only to the creation of humans by Nuwa. It was really rare in the primordial world. The merit split into two in the air. 80% flew to Hutu, while 20% flew to the shamans and fused with their providence. Logically speaking, this 20% merit should have landed in Panga's heart. Unfortunately, Panga's heart was too extraordinary. If he did not take the initiative to appear, the heavenly Tao could not find any traces of him. He could only give the merit that belonged to him to the destiny of the Magi. However, it was almost the same anyway. Panga's heart did not need merit because it was useless to him. In this world, there were not many treasures that could be of use to Pangu. If even the great Tao merit points couldn't do it, then the heaven and earth merit points wouldn't do either. If the merit of the great Tao was useful, the three pure ones, the 12 ancestral magi, and the primordial world would not exist. Go. Looking at the merit flying towards her, Hutu waved her jade-like arm and split it into two. One part of it fused into the destiny of the Magi, and the other part fused into the western land. Immediately, the western land changed again. It rumbled and trembled. Earth veins recovered, and earth chi spewed out like dragons and tigers. The density of Khanate chi increased greatly. In fact, there was already vitality surging in the place where the earth veins gathered. Clearly, Khanate life forms were being nurtured. Nurturing life was the foundation of the earth. The western land was nurturing Khanate life forms again. This meant that it was becoming more stable. It was gradually getting rid of the influence of the Immortal Fiend War and was beginning to emit vitality. In the unknown land of the primordial world, where the destiny of the Magi was, it was pitch black as far as the eye could see. That was negative karma. It was boundless and could not be seen. It covered up the destiny of the Magi and could not be seen at all. This meant that the luck of the Magi was over. If nothing went wrong, the Magi would not be far from complete decline. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. 2 merit points descended from the sky and forcefully opened a gap in the boundless negative karma, revealing the destiny of the Magi. This meant that the Magi had a chance of survival. A change had happened. This was something that had never happened in history. According to the original trajectory of history, Hutu, like most Khanate god fiends, would not come to the barren west, let alone repair the western land. Now, for the sake of the primordial world, not only did Hutu come, but she also revived the western land, causing everything to change. Feng Zichen changed history once again. The situation in the primordial world became more and more incomprehensible. Goddess Hutu is merciful and boundless. At that moment, all the living beings in the west prostrated on the ground and chanted the name of Goddess Hutu, praising her benevolence and greatness. These praises came from the bottom of their hearts. It could be said that in the hearts of all the living beings in the west, Hutu's status had already surpassed that of Junti. After all, no matter how good Junti was, he could not benefit every living being in the west. However, Hutu had done it. Even the 2 saints, Junti and Junti, bowed slightly to show their respect. Previously, the two of them had suspected that Hutu had some ulterior motive. However, after seeing Hutu put merit into the Western land, they completely dispelled their doubts. They understood that Hutu was truly selfless. How enormous would that amount of merit be? Juinti and Juini believed that it could immediately make someone become a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. However, Hutu did not even hesitate to send such merit out. Juinti's eyebrows twitched when he saw that. It was also this scene that made them understand that Hutu was a truly merciful person. Just like Pango, she had great love for the primordial world. At that moment, their hearts were filled with respect for Hutu. That was the character that a saint should have. They were far inferior. It was really shameful for a saint. One had to know that the current Hutu was very different from the Hutu in the legends of history. In the past, merit was useless to the Magi, so they could give it up. However, ever since Feng Zichen passed down the Tao of God Fiends, the Magi had been cultivating their true spirits day and night. They could already use their true spirits to absorb merit. Merit was no longer something dispensable to the Magi. It was extremely important. It was a treasure that could increase one's cultivation level. However, even so, Huda still did not hesitate to give up her merit. How? How could this not be admirable? This kind of person who had great love in his heart, the word great compassion, was created for him. Chapter 282. Hutu, naturally, the changes in the West could not be hidden from the perception of the great mediums. Therefore, they immediately cast their gazes over. When they saw Huda's actions, they were speechless for a moment. They asked themselves if it were them, they would not give up in the face of the merit that was enough to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. How could the primordial world be more important than their own Tao path? Moreover, it was a barbarian land in the West. It was not worth sacrificing their own Tao path for him. If it were the East, these powerful beings might hesitate, but it was impossible for them to do so in the West. If the West was crippled, so be it. It was nothing to the entire primordial world. Anyway, there were no experts or treasures there. What was there to pity about a dead place? However, although their choices were different, their hearts were filled with respect for Hutu, just like Juinti. Huda's actions seemed silly, but it was really rare. The temptation of the primordial chaos Tao realm was not something that anyone could resist. In the primordial world, there were only a few people who were as pure and loving as Hutu. It was precisely because of the existence of these people that the primordial world could reach this day step by step. Anyone with great love was a treasure of the primordial world and worthy of everyone's admiration. That was because, in their hearts, they were thinking about the primordial world and all living beings in the primordial world. Their love was selfless. Everyone could feel it, regardless of friend or foe. Apart from the existence that wanted to destroy the world, who could resent such a person? Previously, we were saying that the Magi were fierce. Compared to the three pure ones, they didn't look like the descendants of the great Taoist priests at all. Today, we judged people by their appearance. The three pure ones are far inferior to the Magi. Seeing what Huda had done, and then looking at the actions of the three pure ones, they thought of the past. The powerful beings sighed and felt that they had misjudged. On Kunlun Mountain, the three pure ones were silent. What Hutu had done was really unexpected. They could not help but feel ashamed. When they heard the words of their fellow Taoists, the shame in their hearts grew even stronger. They could not say anything. Although the powerful beings had many thoughts, none of them planned to develop in the West. After all, the West was too far behind the East. Even if it recovered, it was still far from being comparable to the East. At most, it would turn from a barren land to a barren land. It would not be able to enter the eyes of the powerful beings. Moreover, so many years had passed, and the East had long since become the place where the providence of heaven and earth gathered. The essence of the entire primordial world was gathered in the East. How can the West compare to the East? Not to mention reviving a portion of it. Even if it were to revive all of it and return to the golden age of the ancient era, it would still be impossible. Seeing the changes in the Western land, Xuan-Ti and Jie-in were speechless. It was them who had gauged the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure. Although Hoodoo had not completely repaired the land of the West, with her efforts, the West had been rejuvenated. This meant that the Western continent had the possibility of repairing itself. As time passed, the Western ancestral vein would completely recover, and the other branches would also be affected and recover one by one. At that time, even if the Western continent couldn't reproduce the glory of the ancient times, it would be much better than it was now. Alas! In the end, we have desires and have the heart to gain and lose. Ever since we became saints, the two of us have been scheming and doing sinister things. We have gradually forgotten our original intentions. In this world, there are still people who love greatly. They are selfless in the primordial world. They are far from what we can compare to. After a long while, the Taoist priest finally spoke. Then he stood up, tidied his clothes, and said to Taoist Xuan-Ti beside him, "Junior brother, follow me to see fellow Taoist Hutu, and thank her for her kindness on behalf of the countless living beings in the West." "Senior brother, you're right. Fellow Taoist Hutu has great love and was born with a merciful heart. Her actions are worthy of the descendants of the great Taoist priests." Nodding, Taoist Xuan-Ti praised. Hutu's character could be said to be the closest to Pangu in the primordial world. At the same time, they were the ones who benefited the most from the recovery of the Western continent. As the ancestral magus of the Magi race, Hutu was destined not to stay in the West for long. So what if her status was higher than theirs? Time was the most terrifying weapon in the world. After countless years had passed, the living beings in the West would continue to replace each other, other than the immortal existence, who would remember Hutu's contributions. At that time, all the credit would be given to them. The West would still be theirs. No one could shake it. Hutu was not to be feared. Fellow Taoist, please wait. When the phenomenon of heaven and earth disappeared, Hutu was ready to leave. After all, she had achieved her goal of coming here. She had nothing else to ask for from the West. Why should she stay here? However, just as Hutu was about to leave, Xuan-Ti hurriedly ran over and stopped her. In order to show his respect, Xuan-Ti did not use his magical power to teleport. Instead, he flew over. Therefore, he did not appear in front of Hutu immediately. "Greetings, fellow Taoists." Hutu was not surprised by the appearance of the two of them. No matter what, the Western continent was their territory. It would be strange if they did not come to take a look after she had caused such a big commotion here. "Xuan-Ti, thank you for your great kindness, fellow Taoist." Xuan-Ti came in front of Hutu and did not say anything. He first bowed to Hutu 3 times. The first bow was for themselves. They thanked Hutu for repairing the Western continent. The second bow was for the Western continent. The third bow was for the Western living beings. As the true ruler of the Western continent, Xuan-Ti had the right to thank Hutu on behalf of the Western continent and countless living beings. Originally, in this world, apart from heaven and earth, only Hongjun, Dijun, and Dijiang could accept the gift of the saint. No one else could. Heaven and earth, needless to say. Hongjun was the Tao ancestor. The saints were taught by him, so he could naturally accept their gifts. Dijun was the lord of heaven and earth. Dijiang was the eldest son of Pangu. The two of them had noble statuses and were not inferior to the saints. Of course, they could accept their gifts. But today, because Hutu had repaired the Western continent, she was blessed by the will of the earth and her status was constantly rising. She could accept this gift. Fellow Taoists, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, Hutu will leave first. The witch clan still has important matters for me to deal with. Hutu calmly accepted the gift of the two saints and asked. After helping Juan Ti so much, of course, Hutu was calm. Since fellow Taoist still has important matters to attend to, poor Wei will not keep you. When we have time in the future, poor Wei and Dijiang will definitely visit you in person to thank you for your kindness today. Juan Ti bowed again and said, Chapter 283. Big Brother, I'm back. In the ancestral Magi Palace, Hutu said to Dijiang, who was sitting in the main seat, Yes. How's the preparation of the prehistoric geomancy map? Dijiang nodded and asked expressionlessly. However, he did not mention anything about the West. In the end, other than the praise, the wizard clan had gained very little. It could not be compared to the price they had paid. Instead, they had made a wedding dress for Juanti. Huda's actions were completely inappropriate. She did not discuss it with the others in advance and made the decision on her own. To put it bluntly, she was arrogant and did not take the other ancestral magi seriously at all. She treated the wizard clan as her own. Hutu had used up all his resources for many years. Dijiang didn't get angry because of their sibling relationship. However, it was difficult for Hutu to get a smile from him. As for the merit that Hutu had obtained for the wizard clan, how could the Xianhuang merit be compared to the power of Panga's heart? However, Hutu did not gain nothing from doing so. At the very least, after this time, the 12 ancestral magi had surpassed the 3 pure ones in terms of reputation for the first time. They had become the successor of the most similar Pangu in the prehistoric world. This was something to be gratified about. I already know the landscape of the West and the trend of the earth veins. In a few days, I will be able to draw the prehistoric geomancy map. Knowing that she had made a big mistake, Hutu could not help but be cautious when she spoke. Yes, in that case you can stay in the Panga Palace to draw the prehistoric geomancy map. Try to refine it as soon as possible and add a great foundation for the wizard clan. Dijiang nodded and continued to speak expressionlessly. By the way, after the prehistoric geomancy map is successfully refined, don't forget to inform the Zichen clan of the human race to bring him here. How can the wizard of our clan not be present for such a big event? In the end, Dijiang seemed to have thought of something and reminded Hutu. From his words, it was obvious that he had identified Feng Zichen as the master of the wizard clan. Feng Zichen had created the Khanate sword principle and become the sword ancestor of the primitive universe. His achievement had undoubtedly improved Dijiang's impression of him. This also prompted Dijiang to make up his mind to give him the position of the wizard tribe's teacher. Of course, the position of Magus originally belonged to Feng Zichen. However, that was after the rise of the celestial and demonic Tao. Dijiang's decision was only to save the process and send the result to Feng Zichen in advance so that he could assume the position of wizard. Yes, big brother, I will definitely hurry up and refine the prehistoric geomancy map. As for the Zichen clan, I'll send Xing Tian to the human race to invite him. Dijiang's words were reasonable, and Huda had no objections. Xing Tian is here. It seems that the prehistoric geomancy map is almost complete. On the shore of the East Sea, Feng Zichen, who was dealing with human affairs in the imperial court, suddenly felt Xing Tian's aura and rushed over. With a thought, he understood the purpose of Xing Tian's visit. Feng Jia, Jiang Xiong, I have to leave the human race for a period of time. So, in the following time, I'll leave the human race's affairs to you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask the human kings for advice. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen said to the disciples beside him, Yes, we will do as you say. Feng, Jie, and Jiang Xiong looked at each other and nodded helplessly. Originally, the human race's affairs were handled by the two of them. It was the same whether Feng Zichen was there or not. Who was Feng Zichen? How could he stay in the human race and deal with all kinds of chores? Many years ago, in the name of training his disciples, he had left all the affairs of the human race to his disciples to deal with. Yes, nodding, Feng Zichen turned to Jiang Hui and said, Jiang Hui, keep an eye on your 2 senior brothers for me and help them find out what's missing. Yes, I understand. Jiang Hui responded obediently. Among Feng Zichen's 3 disciples, Jiang Hui, who had inherited the path of wisdom, was the most obedient and smart. All right, I'll go now. After saying that, Feng Zichen's figure disappeared in front of the 3 of them and went to meet Xing Tian. Fellow Taoist, long time no see. Outside the East Sea, Feng Zichen came to Xing Tian and said with a smile, Not long, not long. All these years in the untainted land, your name has been spreading everywhere. I'm so envious. Xing Tian also smiled and said with some envy, The untainted land's powerful beings cared about their reputation the most. Feng Zichen established the Khanate Sword Dao and became famous in the untainted land. It could be said that he was in the limelight. How could he not be envious? Fellow Taoist, are you looking for me because the untainted land's geomancy map is completed? Without answering Xing Tian's words, Feng Zichen changed the topic. Yes, I'm here for that. The untainted land map is about to be completed. Fellow Taoist, as a shaman of our race, you can't be absent. When it came to serious matters, Xing Tian's expression inevitably became serious. The Tao of the fiend gods had been passed down in the untainted land for so many years, and the results were obvious to all. It had brought many benefits to the untainted land. Secretly, many juniors of the untainted land had already referred to Feng Zichen as their teacher. Therefore, Feng Zichen's title as a shaman had long become an established fact. Di Jiang had no choice but to acknowledge it. All right, I'll accompany you then. I went in a hurry the last time and didn't get to see the glory of the number 1 race of the untainted land. This time I must take a good look. With that, the 2 of them broke through space and rushed in the direction of the Pengahal. That was the center of power of the untainted land. At the same time, it was also the most secretive and safest place in the untainted land. Fellow Taoist, please wait for a moment. In the void, Feng Zichen's expression suddenly changed. He stopped in his tracks and said to Xing Tian beside him, Here. Xing Tian stopped in his tracks with an inexplicable expression. This was the place where Quafu had fallen. When they walked out of the void, they saw a dense peach forest. The branches and leaves were luxuriant, blocking all the sunlight. This was the peach wood staff in Quafu's hand after his death. Turning into a peach forest to block the sunlight meant to block the glory of the golden crow and prevent all living beings from suffering the pain of exposure. This was Quafu's obsession before his death. Quafu's pursuit of the sun has great merit. I think it won't be long before he wakes up from his deep sleep and returns to the untainted land. After a moment of silence, Feng Zichen said, Daluo Jingxian was immortal. Every time he fell, it was a deep sleep, and he would wake up one day. Moreover, Quafu had fallen in order to protect the untainted land. The way of heaven would not let him sleep forever. In this world, there had never been a real fall of Daluo Jingxian. Even a sage could not do it. Alas, Quafu's origin has been destroyed. Even if he returns, I don't know how long it will take for him to recover to his peak state. Xing Tian sighed and said worriedly, Chapter 284. Daluo was a realm and a Dao fruit. He would never be lost. His essence was different. That was the foundation of Daluo Jinxian's strength. Without it, his strength would fall to the bottom of the valley, causing him to have an empty realm, but not the corresponding strength. He would inevitably suffer a huge loss if he fought with others. It's fine, Daluo Jingxian. What I don't lack the most is time. Time and life and death had lost their meaning to Daluo Jingxian. The great Tao was their only eternal pursuit. Mount Buzhou, the dignified Mount Buzhou, the Buzhou mountain that had remained unchanged since ancient times. On this day, the long-awaited peace of Mount Buzhou was broken. In the sacred atmosphere, the experts of the Magi race gathered there, stirring up endless, turbid, murderous aura. Rumble, boundless, murderous aura soared into the sky, stirring up endless winds and clouds, causing the heavenly courts to tremble. The demon gods looked at the Magi in shock and bewilderment. They subconsciously gripped their weapons tightly, thinking that the Magi were about to start a war again. Of course, the Magi did not come here to start a war with the demons. It was because Mount Buzhou was the closest place to Pangu. The Magi disrespected the heavenly Tao. After the primordial world geomancy map was completed, they naturally had to report to Pangu. Mount Buzhou was the most suitable place in the primordial world. Ever since the birth of the Magi, Mount Buzhou had been the place where they worshipped their ancestors. The Magi were established under the witness of Mount Buzhou. After that, whenever there were any major changes in the Magi, they would come to Mount Buzhou and ask Pangu to bear witness. At the same time, no faction was allowed to interfere when the Magi were worshipping their ancestors or attack the Magi during this period. This was not because they were afraid of the Magi, but to express their respect for Pangu. There was no one who did not respect the god of creation. After seeing that the Magi were worshipping Pangu, the demons could not help but heave a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as they didn't attack the heavenly court. If they could live, who would be willing to die? Daluo Jinxian didn't want to fall into eternal slumber either. What is the sorcerer tribe doing now? Why are they worshipping Pangu all of a sudden? I'm afraid it's not good for our demon race. Inside the numinous sky hall, Jun's mood was indescribable. Every time the sorcerer tribe finished worshipping Pangu, their strength would increase greatly. Come to think of it, this time was no exception. In that case, the demon race would be in danger. Alas! If we don't think of a way to increase the strength of the demon clan, the next great Magi demon war will be the end of the demon clan. Sitting on the throne, Jun thought helplessly. The demon race was too difficult. Father God, today the shaman tribe observes the stars and the geography. They study the changes in the terrain of the primordial world and describe the terrain of the primordial world to form a map of the primordial world. This map contains the changes in the terrain of the primordial world and the changes of time. It can suppress the primordial world. Father, please enlighten me. Under the majestic Mount Buzhou, Zhang's expression was solemn as he said piously to the void, Father, please enlighten me. Behind him, the rest of the ancestral sorcerers also shouted piously, Map of the primordial world? What is this? Could it be that the sorcerer tribe also knows how to refine treasures? The powerful beings who were paying attention to this place could not help but be surprised when they heard this. Ever since the birth of the sorcerer tribe, they had never heard of them refining treasures. What the powerful beings thought did not affect the sorcerer tribe at all. A huge painting scroll suddenly flew out of Huda's hand and floated above Mount Buzhou, slowly spreading out. On it was the painting of beautiful mountains and rivers, the mountains and rivers of the earth, the landscape of the primordial world, all the changes in the primordial world, the vicissitudes of the primordial world, and the endless creation. What was on the earth book he had, what was on the Hichu Luo book he had, what was on the mountain river map he also had, everything on the primordial world he had. This was the map of the primordial world, the first map of the primordial world, and also the most comprehensive map of the primordial world. It recorded everything on the primordial world. All the changes on the primordial world could be found on it. The 12 ancestral sorcerers spent hundreds of thousands of years to travel to every corner of the primordial world. They spent countless efforts and paid countless prices to finally complete the map of the primordial world. This was a treasure that was enough to shock the world. It contained countless creation and had incredible power. It could suppress the primordial world and even suppress the destiny of the sorcerer tribe. Splash! At the moment when the map of the primordial world was born, it suddenly rained in the primordial world. The rain was golden and contained the chi of origin. It could create everything. The rain was not heavy, but it covered a wide area. In the primordial world, no matter where it was, there was golden rain falling. Mount Bujo, the heavenly court, Kunlun Mountain, the boundless sea of blood, there was golden rain falling. Even the Taoist temples of the powerful beings were no exception. At the same time when the golden rain fell, spiritual springs suddenly gushed out from the ground, emitting amazing spiritual chi. Around the spiritual springs, golden lotuses were born. They swayed and had an intoxicating fragrance. At this moment, great joy surged in the hearts of all the living beings in the primordial world at the same time. They could not help but smile. Not only the living beings in the primordial world, but even the boundless void, the great Tao of the universe, and the rules of heaven and earth were joyful. They were excited and manifested in the world, causing all kinds of strange phenomena to occur in the primordial world. The appearance of the map of the primordial world made the primordial world extremely excited. Its emotions spread out and affected everything, and then created the strange scene in front of them. Rumble! In the heavens and earth, a supreme power suddenly spread out. The whole primordial world was roaring. The great Tao of heaven and earth was shaking as if it was about to collapse. Nothing existed. This power was broader, more vast, and more majestic than the heavens and earth. In front of it, the heavenly Tao was extremely small and not worth mentioning. There was no doubt that this was the power of Pangu. The prayers of the 12 ancestral sorcerers worked. Panga's power descended. The vast power completely enveloped the map of the primordial world, constantly changing its essence and making it change in the most perfect direction. In the void, the 3 Taos of heaven, earth, and man spontaneously manifested. They carried the great Tao of heaven and earth and the endless rules of heaven and earth, and rushed to the map of the primordial world to strengthen its foundation and accelerate its evolution. Pangu, the father of the primordial world. His will was the will of heaven and earth. The direction of his power was the direction of the power of heaven and earth. If he wanted to refine the map of the primordial world, the power of heaven and earth would naturally follow. With the help of all kinds of great powers, the map of the primordial world underwent earth-shattering changes. The beautiful mountains, rivers, and endless terrains on it gradually came to life. They rose and fell continuously, interweaving with an inexplicable power. Innate Tao patterns appeared, entangled with each other, corroborated each other, and derived Tao and truth. They were branded on the map of the primordial world, like the great Tao. One could see that the chaotic chi on the map of the primordial world was transforming into innate spiritual chi. It gave birth to bright spiritual light and derived endless innate rules. It was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Chapter 285. Rumble. Loud sounds came from the primordial geomancy map, one after another. It was as if a world was being opened. It was extremely grand and deafening. No, it was not as if. It was real. With the support of Panga's power and the power of the primordial world, a vast world was slowly taking shape in the primordial geomancy map. A shocking change was taking place. At that moment, it was as if all the creation in the primordial world had gathered on the primordial geomancy map. As a result, the world evolved extremely quickly. It was so fast that it was unbelievable. It defied common sense. In an instant, it was as if endless years had passed. The realm wall was born, the world was stabilized, the sun, the moon, and the stars were born, and the 3 lights were split. Time and space were formed, and time changed. The world was quickly perfected. Panga's power was beyond imagination. The power of the world was boundless. The combination of the two powers distorted time and space and shortened time. It turned billions of years into an instant. It turned the impossible into possible and created this unbelievable scene. In an extremely short period of time, a vast great world was created. The mysteries of the great Tao were displayed at that moment. The great, desolate Aeon powerhouses watching were flabbergasted. They felt even more horrified in their hearts. That was a power that they could not understand at all. They could not see through it clearly. It was as if they were facing the great Tao. There was only admiration in their hearts. They might be very close to the heavenly Tao. However, they were very far away from the great Tao. There was no sign of the great Tao on the road ahead. Therefore, they could not understand or imagine Penga's power, which had transcended the heavenly Tao and was infinitely close to the great Tao. In their hearts, there was no concept of the great Tao at all. Naturally, they could not understand or reach it. Endless creation and endless power caused the world in the primordial geomancy map to change rapidly. In just a moment, countless changes occurred. That world had already matured and was on the verge of perfection. The sky was high, the earth was heavy, the mountains were majestic, the sea was boundless, and the mountains and rivers were incomparably beautiful. The mountains and rivers were like poems and paintings. The world was filled with endless creation aura. Looking carefully in this world, the mountains, the water, the sky, the earth, the blessed land, and the endless creation all revealed some shadows of the untainted world. It was very similar to the untainted world. It was like a miniature version of the untainted land. That's right. The primordial world map was originally a topographic map of the primordial world. Now that he had obtained the creation of Pengu and derived a world, it was reasonable to use the primordial world as a template. However, although it was called a small world, it was actually not small. Its small size was only the result of comparison with the primordial world. In this world, what world would not be incomparably small compared to the primordial world? In terms of area and source energy, this world was thousands of times thicker than the Great Thousand Realms, far surpassing countless worlds. Boom! At the moment when the world was completely formed, an extremely powerful force suddenly swept out from the geomancy map of untainted land and engulfed the entire untainted land. All living beings in the primordial world, except for the saints, lowered their heads. This was the power that a connate cardinal treasure should have when it was born. It was just like when a sage achieved Tao and shocked the entire untainted land. The connate cardinal treasure was the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. In comparison, the appearance of the human emperor's seal and the 10,000 spirit crown undoubtedly caused a much smaller commotion. They could not be compared at all. The 10,000 spirit crown was still in an incomplete state. Its power was only comparable to an inferior grade connate numinous treasure. Of course, it would not cause any earth-shattering commotion. The human emperor's seal was because Feng Zichen was too weak. He did not dare to let the human emperor's seal show its sharpness to avoid causing any accidents. That was why it appeared in the world in a low-key manner. However, the Magi were different. They were powerful. It had always been others who were afraid of them, not them who were afraid of others. Naturally, they were not worried that someone would snatch the connate cardinal treasure. Therefore, they could completely activate the power of the geomancy map of untainted land and sweep through the entire untainted land to achieve the goal of intimidating everyone. This was the benefit of being powerful. One could do things as one pleased and not be bound by restrictions. It was for this reason that becoming stronger and stronger became the unanimous belief of all living beings in the untainted land. Connate cardinal treasure, that geomancy map of untainted land, is a connate cardinal treasure. The Magi have actually refined a connate cardinal treasure. That's incredible. To be able to cause such a big commotion, the geomancy map of untainted land was undoubtedly a connate cardinal treasure. The great mediums of the untainted land were not blind. It was not like they could not see or feel the power contained in the geomancy map of untainted land. How could they not understand its level? At this moment, they were truly shocked. Even the appearance of Pangu's true body in the great war of liches and demons was not as shocking as this moment. That was a Khanate cardinal treasure. There were only a few supreme treasures in the untainted land. How could it be possible that it was artificially refined by a magi without a primordial spirit? Wasn't it too incredible? The refinement of a Khanate numinous treasure was already extremely difficult. It was difficult for human beings to achieve it. Only with the help of heaven and earth could it be refined. As for a Khanate cardinal treasure that was more powerful than a Khanate numinous treasure, it was definitely not something that could be refined by human beings. Only the heaven and earth could gather unexpected good fortune and nurture it for countless years. But now, in just a few days, a man-made Khanate cardinal treasure was born, just like that. This, everyone was so shocked that they were speechless. They did not know what to say. In fact, it was not surprising that the geomancy map of untainted land could become a Khanate cardinal treasure. First of all, the geomancy map of untainted land recorded everything in the untainted land. It had unimaginable power that could resonate with the untainted land and be supported by it. Secondly, the main body of the geomancy map of untainted land was the chaos membrane. It was not a treasure of the untainted land and did not belong to the Khanate world. It was a spiritual object from the chaos. It contained the good fortune of the great Tao and was the manifestation of the chaos. Pangu had broken the chaos membrane and caused the untainted land to be born. It could be said that the chaos membrane was the mother body that gave birth to the untainted land. From this, it could be seen how extraordinary he was. Such a treasure contained the good fortune of the chaos. It was a material that could be refined into a chaos numinous treasure. And a chaos numinous treasure was an existence of the same level as a Khanate cardinal treasure. In this way, the chaos membrane could naturally be refined into a Khanate cardinal treasure. In the end, the one who refined the geomancy map of untainted land was none other than the most powerful existence in the world, Pangu. Under his power, heaven and earth moved with him and refined the geomancy map of untainted land together. The attributes of the chaos membrane also degenerated from chaos to Khanate and became more suitable for the untainted land. With so much incredible power gathered, it was natural for the geomancy map of untainted land to become a Khanate cardinal treasure. It was not surprising. It would be surprising if it could not succeed. Chapter 286. The great mystical abilities of the primordial world did not understand the twists and turns. They thought that it was a Khanate cardinal treasure refined by the Magi and naturally fell into shock. The heavens have really changed. This time, the only advantage of the demon race is completely gone. The demon race is finished. After regaining their senses, the first reaction of the great mystical abilities was that the demon race was finished. In the past, the demon race had the bell of chaos. This Khanate cardinal treasure could protect the demon race's destiny and break the number one physical body of the Magi in the primordial world. Therefore, although the demon race was at a disadvantage in the battle with the Magi, they could always preserve a chance of survival. Moreover, the more they fought, the stronger they became. In the end, they reached the level where they were on par with the Magi. But now everything was different. Now that the Magi had the Khanate cardinal treasure, the demon race no longer had an advantage. This was undoubtedly a fatal blow to the demon race, which was inferior to the Magi. When the next great Magi demon war broke out, the demon race would completely lose their advantage. The outcome could be imagined. Bang! In the Lingxiao Hall, the moment the aura of the primordial world erupted, Di Jun could not help but change his expression. A terrifying aura burst out and shattered all the decorations in the hall. However, in extreme shock, Di Jun lost his usual calmness. For a moment, he could not control his strength, causing his aura to leak out, causing the Lingxiao Hall to be in a mess. The Magi! Looking at the primordial world geomancy map, Di Jun gritted his teeth and spat out 2 words. The moment these 2 words left his mouth, boundless hatred and monstrous killing intent erupted from Di Jun's body. The hatred of blocking the Tao. This was the greatest hatred of the primordial world. Di Jun and the Magi had formed a feud for blocking the Tao. Those who block my path to the Tao are worse than those who kill me. Compared to this hatred, the hatred that the Magi and the demon race had developed over the years was not worth mentioning. After unifying the primordial world, Di Jun would be able to perfect the heavenly emperor karma rank and become a saint on the spot. As for the sorcerer tribe, they were the stones that stood in his way, blocking him firmly in front of the door of Tao. This hatred could only be resolved when Di Jun became a saint or when the Wu tribe was destroyed. Now, with the geomancy map of the primordial world, the strength of the wizard tribe had increased greatly. The hope of Di Jun becoming a saint was even slimmer. Even the demon race was in danger of being wiped out. You forced me to do this. Clenching his fists, Di Jun made up his mind. He was about to attain the Tao of primordial chaos. It was extremely difficult for outsiders to reach the primordial chaos Tao realm. But for Di Jun, it was not as difficult as he had imagined. He was the Lord of Zhousing and the Lord of Heaven. These 2 were the most important components of the great desolate world. Their innate origins were incomparably powerful. Refining any one of them would allow him to become a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. However, using this method to achieve primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian was ultimately not his own cultivation. There were too many restrictions. Moreover, primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian was not a saint. Once he became a primordial chaos, it would be difficult for him to become a saint again. Although primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian was comparable to a saint in terms of strength, there was still a huge gap between them in other aspects. This was unacceptable to Di Jun, who wanted to become a saint and be eternal. Therefore, even though the method to achieve the Tao was right in front of him, Di Jun did not like it, so he did not do it. However, that was in the past. Di Jun had not been forced into a desperate situation. He still had a choice, but now everything was different. If he did not move forward, what awaited him and the demon race was only destruction. If he advanced, he would live. If he retreated, he would die. Di Jun naturally knew how to choose. Only by living would he have a chance. If he died, he would have nothing. With a flash, Di Jun arrived at the place where the Heaven Realm's origin was and began to refine it. Compared to Zhousing, the Heaven Realm's origin was easier to refine. After all, Di Jun did not have the ability to refine the Ziwei star. If he rashly refined Zhousing, the possibility of failure was very high. As for the demon race, they could not fail again. While Di Jun was focused on refining the Heaven Realm's origin, the changes under Mount Buzhou had not ended. In the sky, black and yellow merit gathered. Half of it fell into the primordial map, while 90% of the remaining half merged into the luck of the wizard race to continue the vitality of the wizard race. The remaining half went around and landed on Feng Zichen's head. After all, the wizard race was able to think of drawing the primordial map because of his guidance. This merit should belong to him. With the help of merit, the power of the primordial map became stronger. As the creation aura surged, there was more black and yellow aura. There were even signs of life in that world. That world had been completely perfected. This was the backup plan that Pangu had left for the wizard race. With the primordial map, even if the wizard race declined, as long as they hid in the world inside, no one could do anything to them. Moreover, this world was big enough and the origin was rich enough. Not to mention Daluo Jinxian. Even a sage-to-be could achieve success here. This was the indestructible foundation of the wizard race. Unfortunately, this merit was the primordial merit and not the innate merit bestowed by the great Tao. Although the primordial map could be considered an innate merit treasure, it was still inferior to the three heaven-opening treasures. The Bell of Chaos, the Taiji painting, and Panga's banner were the three heaven-opening treasures. They were also the most powerful treasures in the primordial world and could not be surpassed. Although the primordial map had been used in creation, it could not be compared to them. However, this could not deny its power. The ability of the primordial map seemed similar to the Mountain River map and the Earth Book, but it was fundamentally different. The world in the Mountain River map was a major kiliacosm, but the world contained in the primordial map was thousands of times larger. The Earth Book recorded the terrain of the primordial world, while the primordial map recorded everything in the primordial world. The He-Tu and the Luo-Shu recorded the primordial water vein map. The primordial map also had it, and it was more complete than it. The primordial map gathered the advantages of several powerful connate numinous treasures. One could imagine its power. This was a true treasure of the earth. The Bell of Chaos was a treasure of the heavens. It suppressed Joshing, the universe, and endless space-time. The primordial map was a treasure of the earth. It suppressed the boundless earth, carried countless living beings, and had endless creation. The 10,000 Spirit Crown was a treasure of humans. It suppressed all living beings and contained the power of all spirits. It had endless power. These three treasures represented the three Taos of heaven, earth, and man. They had great luck and power. If they appeared together, the primordial world would definitely undergo unimaginable changes and benefit the world greatly. Unfortunately, because Feng Zichen's ability was insufficient, the 10,000 Spirit Crown was in an incomplete state and could not completely appear in the world to resonate with the other two treasures. Therefore, the three Taos of heaven, earth, and man did not move. He had really missed out on a great opportunity. Chapter 287. Thank you, Father. After bowing respectfully to Mount Buzhou, Dijiang waved his hand and put away the primordial geomancy map. To be honest, Dijiang was a little surprised that the primordial geomancy map could become a connate cardinal treasure. His original intention was only to refine a supreme treasure that could suppress the earth. This showed that the witch race was not a bunch of people who did nothing. It was also to stop the mouths of the living beings of the primordial world. He did not expect that the primordial geomancy map would be refined into a connate merit cardinal treasure by Pangu as soon as it was born. It was a pleasant surprise. No, it was a huge surprise. The witch race was really invincible. The primordial geomancy map could sort out the earth veins of the primordial world and integrate everything in the earth. It could make the primordial world more stable. With this treasure in hand, the witch race's position as the lord of the earth was completely stable. Father is still thinking about the witch race. Looking at the primordial geomancy map in his hand, Dijiang thought happily. Apart from obtaining the connate cardinal treasure, there was another thing that made Dijiang very happy. That was Pangu was still paying attention to the witch race. Otherwise, he would not have helped the witch race refine the connate cardinal treasure. This time, Pangu suddenly manifested a miracle to help the witch race. His attitude towards the witch race was undoubtedly very obvious. This made the great divine arts of the primordial world look at the witch race differently. After all, they were descendants of Pangu. With this blood relationship, the witch race was different from other races and received more preferential treatment. Let's go! After bowing to Mount Buzhou again, Dijiang first glanced coldly at the heavenly court, then left with the witch race. It had long passed the 100,000 years set by the Tao ancestor. Even if Dijiang attacked the demon race now, no one could say anything. At this moment, the witch race had a connate cardinal treasure, and their strength had increased greatly. Their aura had also risen to the extreme. It was the best time to fight the demon race. However, Dijiang could not. In order to repair the western land, Hutu had almost drained the power of Panga's heart. If they were to start a war with the demon clan now, they would definitely be able to win. But the price they would have to pay was definitely not something the shaman clan could bear. Therefore, they had to wait. Wait until Panga's heart regained its strength. Then, it would be the end of the demon race. But at this time, Dijiang would not know that what he missed today was the best opportunity to destroy the demon clan. From now on, there would be no more. That was because what he had been waiting for was not the great victory he had hoped for, but the demons who were getting stronger and stronger, and the magi who were getting weaker and weaker. The affairs of the world are impermanent, who would have thought? In the Panga Palace, Feng Zichin and the 12 ancestors of sorcery sat on the ground, surrounding the untainted land geomancy map in the middle. They were meditating on something quietly. At that moment, the primordial world geomancy map emitted a faint glow and interweaved into images. If one looked carefully, one would see the famous mountains, great rivers, and blessed lands of the great desolate Aeon. Earth veins appeared, crisscrossing, connecting the famous mountains, great rivers, and blessed lands one by one. It was like the connection between Zhouxing, conforming to some inexplicable Taoist rhyme and containing supreme creation. This was the distribution map of Panga's meridians, the secret hidden in the deepest part of the untainted land. Now, Feng Zichin and the 12 ancestors of sorcery planned to use this Panga's meridians to redefine the Taoism of gods and demons, making it more suitable and perfect for the Magi clan. Appear! 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 At that moment, the 12 ancestors of sorcery seemed to have understood something. Suddenly, their bodies burst out a bright light, and in front of them, they condensed into shadows. In front of Dijiang, there was a shadow that was like a yellow sack, red as fire, with 6 legs and 4 wings and no face. It was the ancestor of space. In front of Gomong, there was a shadow that was green like bamboo, with a bird's body and a human's face. It was the ancestor of wood in the east. In front of Jerome, there was a shadow that had a beast's head and a human's body. It was covered in red scales, with fire snakes pierced through its ears and a fire dragon under its feet. It was the ancestor of fire in the south. In front of Gonggong, there was a shadow that had a python's head and a human's body. It was covered in black scales, with a black dragon under its feet and a green python coiled around its hands. It was the ancestor of water in the north. In front of Reshu, there was a shadow that had a human's face and a tiger's body. It was covered in golden scales with a pair of wings, a snake pierced through its left ear, and 2 dragons under its feet. It was the ancestor of metal in the west. In front of Hutu, there was a shadow that had a human's body and a snake's tail. It had 7 hands behind its back and 2 in front of its chest. It was the ancestor of earth in the central region. These 12 Taoist shadows were like gods and demons with different shapes. As soon as they appeared, they emitted a strong aura, as if they were going to suppress the whole universe. They were the original bodies of the 12 ancestors of sorcery, the incarnations of the great Tao, the dominators of the law, and the pinnacle of the untainted land. After comprehending Panga's meridian diagram for several years, the 12 ancestors of sorcery constantly compared it with their own meridians. Once they were enlightened, they defined the celestial demon Tao with their own meridians and deduced their own celestial demon Tao. In the future, if anyone practiced the celestial demon Tao, in addition to reverting to Panga's Tao body, they could also revert to the bodies of the 12 ancestors of sorcery and become the ancestor of sorcery's Tao body. This was undoubtedly a great thing for the cultivators who practiced the celestial demon Tao, as it gave them more choices. It was also a great thing for the celestial demon Tao, as it made it more perfect. Dang! At that moment, in the depths of Feng Zichin's mind, where the 12 ancestors of sorcery could not notice, the Hongmeng Daozhong trembled and let out a melodious bell sound. In an instant, endless Tao enlightenment burst out and poured into Feng Zichin's heart, causing his eyes to suddenly turn purple, noble, and mysterious. Everything was different. At that moment, Feng Zichen seemed to have achieved Tao, and the world was completely different in his eyes. What he saw before him was endless connate Tao patterns. Everything was made up of Tao patterns, and in the simplest way, it explained the most fundamental secrets of Tao. The Tao shadows in front of the 12 ancestors of sorcery were constantly decomposing in Feng Zichen's eyes, turning into the most basic runes and gradually overlapping with Panga's meridian diagram, tracing back to the origin. The 12 ancestors of sorcery were born in Pangu, and now they returned to Pangu. It was tracing back to the origin. After so many years, the Hongmeng Daozhong reappeared with its supreme divine power, helping Feng Zichen to enter the Tao fusing realm and understanding the evolution of Panga's meridian diagram. Pangu was the most powerful existence in the world, and everything about him was mysterious and unknown. His Tao was even more obscure and difficult to understand. Even connate god fiends would find it difficult to understand. Directly asking a god fiend cultivator to understand Panga's meridian diagram, there was no need to think too much, as no one could do it. Therefore, with the help of the Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen understood. He wanted to use the Tao bodies of the 12 ancestors of sorcery to recreate Panga's Tao body and further perfect the Tao of God Fiend. Obviously, it was impossible to directly cultivate Panga's meridian diagram, but the meridian diagram of the 12 ancestors of sorcery was different. Although cultivating them was also difficult, it was only difficult. Compared to Panga's meridian diagram, which was obviously impossible to cultivate, there was undoubtedly more hope, and it was much simpler. When the 12 ancestors of sorcery were united, they could summon Panga's true body. Then, when the meridian diagram of the 12 ancestors of sorcery was united, they could evolve Panga's meridian diagram. Chapter 288. Feng Zichen's goal was to let his descendants cultivate the wizard incarnation technique, and then use the wizard incarnation body to reverse Panga's Tao body. This method was undoubtedly much simpler than directly reverting to the Panga Tao body, and it was also much more feasible. Feng Zichen could directly reverse into Panga's Tao body. That was a coincidence. It was the result of endless creation. It was unique in the primordial world. No one else could replicate it. Now this method was more widespread and could let people see the hope of attaining the Tao. In the untainted land, there were tens of thousands of cultivation methods. However, there were only a few that could attract people like a flock of ducks. Why? This was because there were only a few things that could allow a person to attain Tao: the celestial Tao of the Xian sect, the sacred Tao of the Devil sect. Only cultivation methods that could allow one to attain the Tao could be called the Tao. The rest could only be called methods and were not of much use. As an unorthodox disciple, he did not belong to the orthodox sect. Now, the Tao of gods and devils created by Feng Zichen had the possibility of achieving the Tao. It was already considered a supreme great Tao. As the era changed, it was not impossible to gather unparalleled luck and replace the celestial Tao of the celestial sect, becoming the mainstream of a certain era. There were no eternal protagonists in the world, and it was impossible for the celestial way of the celestial sect to prosper forever. Later on, Buddhism flourished first, followed by the rise of the Devil sect. This was already proven. Times changed, the situation rose and fell, and it was boundlessly magnificent. There were boundless opportunities, and whoever was able to grasp them could possibly become the tide of the era. The Tao of fiend gods might have a chance to replace the Tao of immortals. Now, what Feng Zichen needed to do was to create the conversion method and turn this possibility into reality. In the blink of an eye, another few hundred years had passed. Appear! On this day, Feng Zichen's eyes suddenly turned cold, and a majestic and holy aura gushed out of his body, forcing the 12 ancestral sorcerers' shadows back into their bodies. Then, an indescribable Dao shadow appeared behind Feng Zichen. It stepped forward and stood right above the primordial world map, as if it was indomitable. This was Penga's Dao shadow. With the help of Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen succeeded, further perfecting the Dao of gods and demons, turning the possibility into reality. The Dao of fiend gods had truly become a supreme, great Dao. Just like the celestial path of the celestial path of the celestial path of the demonic path, they all had their own ways to attain the Dao. Later generations could see the hope of attaining the Dao. Unfortunately, this was the Panga Palace, which isolated all senses. Even the heavenly Dao could not pry into it. Otherwise, the perfection of the Dao of divinity and demons, a major event that would affect the future generations for countless years, would definitely receive the blessings of the world. Fellow Daoist, it's done. Di Jiang stepped forward and sensed carefully for a while. He could not help but show joy on his face. He said to Feng Zichen, "Thank you, Magus. The sorcerer tribe will never forget the sorcerer's contribution today." While speaking, Di Jiang even changed the way he addressed him. He did not even call him fellow Taoist, but Magus. It was not Di Jiang's fault for being snobbish. The perfected Tao of gods and demons had completely made up for the shortcomings of the sorcerer tribe. To the sorcerer tribe, it was too important, no less than a new life. Even if he were to exchange the primordial geomancy map for it, Di Jiang would still agree after hesitating for a while. The true spirit was even stronger than the essence soul. The true spirit could do what the essence soul could not. The true spirit could do what the essence soul could do, and it could not do it well. Apart from the fatal flaw of affecting one's Tao path after being damaged and not being easy to repair, there were almost no flaws. The Tao of gods and demons was simply tailor-made for the sorcerer tribe. His appearance was enough to increase the strength of the sorcerer tribe several times. It could also let the descendants of the sorcerer tribe see the hope of attaining the Tao. This was something that the immortal Tao and the fiend Tao did not have. That was because the sorcerer tribe did not have an essence soul. No matter how good these two supreme great Taos that relied on the essence soul, or the sorcerer tribe could not cultivate them. Before this, the cultivation of the sorcerer tribe was the process of constantly condensing their bodies and comprehending the laws. Although it was effective, it was rather simple and had many mistakes. Moreover, it was not systematic and seriously dragged down the progress of cultivation. Therefore, the appearance of the Tao of gods and demons was especially important. Moreover, the Pengu was the lifelong pursuit of the sorcerer tribe. The Tao of gods and demons could allow them to transform into the Pengu. This had an extraordinary meaning to the sorcerer tribe. It was the true meaning of their lives. Di Jiang really could not think of anything to repay such a great kindness. He could only thicken his skin and call Feng Zichen a sorcerer to show his noble status. Fellow Taoist, you are too kind. Feng Zichen accepted Di Jiang's address calmly and did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. This was what he deserved. He had paid such a high price and worked so hard for so long in exchange for the position of a sorcerer. Of course, he would not be polite. The moment Feng Zichen accepted the position of a sorcerer, an inexplicable tremor suddenly came from the Panga Hall. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The statue of the Pengu in the center of the hall was still shaking. A Taoist rhyme was emitted, stirring up layers of ripples and spreading to everyone. Swept by the Taoist rhyme, Feng Zichen only felt that something on his body had a reaction. It spontaneously flew out of his body and flew toward the statue of the Pengu in the hall. It was a token that Feng Zichen was somewhat unfamiliar with. But immediately he thought of what it was. That is the Huta token. This token was the Huta token, a symbol of Huta's identity. It was given to Feng Zichen by Hutu in the Huta tribe that day to show her gratitude. Since receiving this token, Feng Zichen had put it aside and had not used it at all. He had almost forgotten about its existence. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time that the hooded token on Feng Zichen's body flew out, the remaining 11 ancestral Magus tokens also flew out from the ancestral Magus and rushed toward the statue of the Pangu in the hall. This is the manifestation of the Father God. The sudden change surprised the ancestral Magi. They had no idea what had happened. However, since it was Pangu who had made a move, it meant that it was not a bad thing. They only needed to wait patiently. Whoosh! A ball of purple flames suddenly appeared in the hand of the statue of the Pangu and burned the 12 ancestral Magus tokens that flew over. The origin of this purple flame was not recognized by the eyes of the people present. However, they all understood that this was the Taoist fire, a supreme fire. It had unparalleled power and could burn saints. That was because it was the fire of the Pangu. Under this purple flame, the indestructible ancestral Magus tokens began to merge and gradually become one. The Pangu token. This Taoist fire was going to refine the Pangu token. When the Magus race was established, the Pangu token changed and turned into 12 ancestral Magus tokens. They fell into the hands of the 12 ancestral Magi and ceased to exist. Today, looking at the actions of the statue of the Pangu, it was obvious that it was going to refine the Pangu token. Boom! The Taoist fire burned and burst out with a dazzling light. Nothing could be seen clearly. Chapter 289. Not long after, the flames gradually extinguished, and a purple token was revealed. However, to everyone's surprise, the token was not the Pangu's token that they had imagined, but the sorcerer's token. On the purple token, there were 3 bright words, Sorcerer's Token. These 3 words were written by the Great Path Divine Runes, similar to the real name between Feng Zichen's eyebrows. They were words derived from the Great Path and had indescribable power. After the sorcerer's token appeared, it first stayed in the air for a while, then slowly fell into Feng Zichen's hands. This is, touching the sorcerer's token in his hand, Feng Zichen was a little puzzled, so he looked at Dijiang with a puzzled gaze. Congratulations, sorcerer. Father God has appeared and given you the sorcerer's token. This means that he has recognized your identity as a sorcerer. From now on, you are the true sorcerer's master, and your status is second only to the ancestral sorcerer. Dijiang thought for a moment and understood what was going on, so he explained to Feng Zichen. After receiving Pangu's recognition, Feng Zichen's title as a sorcerer was justified. Although he was a sorcerer before, he always felt that it was lacking. Now it was perfect. After all, the sorcerer appointed by Pangu and the sorcerer appointed by the ancestral sorcerer were fundamentally different. This was especially obvious in terms of status and power. Being appointed as a sorcerer by the ancestral sorcerer meant that he had lost the initiative and was restricted by them. If the ancestral sorcerer was not satisfied, he could remove Feng Zichen's title at any time. However, being appointed as a sorcerer by Pangu was different. The initiative was in the hands of Pangu, and the ancestral sorcerer could not interfere at all. Even if they were not satisfied with Feng Zichen, the ancestral sorcerer could only endure it and could not remove his position as a sorcerer. In terms of status, there was an earth-shaking change. From being second only to the ancestral sorcerer, he directly became second only to the ancestral sorcerer in terms of power. The great change could be imagined. Thank you, Father. After listening to Dijiang's explanation, Feng Zichen was overjoyed, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he bowed respectfully to the statue of Pangu. The witch tribe could call him Father God, and so could Feng Zichen. He was the authentic Pangu recognized by the Great Tao. It was perfectly justifiable to call him that. No one could say anything against it. Thank you, fellow Taoists. After paying his respects to Pangu, Feng Zichen thanked the ancestral shamans. You're too kind, Magus. From now on, we're a family. There's no need to be so courteous, Dijiang said with a smile. Now, Feng Zichen and the sorcerer tribe were completely tied together. They might not live and die together, but if something happened to the sorcerer tribe, he would still have to pay a certain price. By the way, fellow Taoist, do you know what is the use of this sorcerer token? After a while, Feng Zichen asked Dijiang. He had held the sorcerer token for a while, but other than Pango's body tempering method, he didn't find any other abilities. I don't know much about the function of this Panga token. I only know that this token is incomparably hard. In the primordial world, almost nothing can break it. Moreover, the inheritance of Father God is recorded on the token. Just this point alone can make it comparable to a connate cardinal treasure. We don't know about the rest. Fellow Taoist, you can figure it out yourself. After pondering for a while, Dijiang replied. He really didn't understand the function of the Panga token. Before the birth of the ancestral shaman, this token had been lying in the Panga hall. It had never shown the slightest bit of magic. If it wasn't for the inheritance of Pango recorded on it, the ancestral shamans would really think that it was an ordinary item. By the way, with the Panga token, you can freely enter and exit the Panga hall. No matter where you are, as long as you have the Panga token in your hand, you can return to the Panga hall with a thought. Dijiang added, as if he had thought of something. This function was undoubtedly discovered by the ancestral shaman. It could ignore all space-time and distance and directly appear in the Panga hall. It was the #1 life-saving skill in the primordial world. The Panga hall was the safest place in the primordial world. No one could fight when they returned here. Even the ancestral shaman doesn't know? Dijiang's answer disappointed Feng Zichen. However, this was nothing. If Dijiang didn't know, he could figure it out himself. The Panga token was the symbol of Panga's identity. Feng Zichen believed that he was not as simple as he appeared to be. Fellow Taoists, the matter of the sorcerer tribe is over. I should go back. When I have time in the future, I will come to the sorcerer tribe to take a look. I will take my leave today. After chatting with the ancestral shaman for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly said there were still a lot of things waiting for him to deal with in the human race. Boom! Not long after leaving the sorcerer tribe, the 10,000 spirit crown on Feng Zichen's head suddenly burst into a bright light, and his aura rose layer by layer. In the blink of an eye, it had reached the level of a superior grade innate spirit treasure. Rays of light hung down. There were 72 colors. They were gorgeous and incomparably luxurious. They enveloped Feng Zichen, showing his noble appearance. Then dragons, phoenixes, cheilants, and other auspicious beasts appeared. There were a total of 81 of them. They were vivid and surrounded Feng Zichen as if they were protecting him. When the human emperor traveled, he was accompanied by the light of the Tao and all spirits to show his nobility. This is, looking at the 10,000 spirit crown, Feng Zichen was inexplicably surprised. He had not expected such a change. The Magi? However, when he saw the phantom of the Magi on the 10,000 spirit crown that had completely materialized and was not inferior to the human race, Feng Zichen understood what had happened. The Magi had submitted. When all spirits submitted, the 10,000 spirit crown would be perfect. On the 10,000 spirit crown, there were countless phantoms of all spirits. Every time one of them condensed, the level of the 10,000 spirit crown would increase. When all the phantoms condensed, it would be the moment he recovered to a connate cardinal treasure. How powerful was the Magi! One of them could rival 1,000 clans. The power brought by their submission was undoubtedly huge. It directly restored the 10,000 spirit crown to the level of a superior grade connate spirit treasure. I didn't expect that preaching the Tao would have such benefits. No wonder those great mystical abilities in the future always like to go to the lower realm to preach the Tao. At this moment, Feng Zichen understood. He had found a way to quickly restore the 10,000 spirit crown. that was preaching the Tao. In this aspect, Feng Zichen had a huge advantage because he had the Tao of the God Fiend. As long as the Tao of the God Fiend flourished in the primordial world, all spirits would cultivate this Tao. Then, naturally, the power of all spirits would gather, causing the phantoms of all spirits to condense. The 10,000 spirit crown would also be restored to a connate cardinal treasure. Of course, conquering was not the only way to make all spirits submit. However, this method was the simplest and fastest. However, preaching the Tao could also make all races submit. This was something that Feng Zichen had never thought of before. This was probably the reason why those great mystical abilities in the future were keen on preaching the Tao. The power of all spirits had endless uses. It was beneficial to saints, let alone great mystical abilities. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.